Hello and welcome to Pirate Radio Episode 2, Season 2. This week we're going to be talking about Team Fortress 2 again. I'm joined by Jason Allen, aka Kaidus, head coach slash manager slash puppeteer of 7, and eepily, who also plays TF2.
I do play TF2 sometimes. Yeah, thank you. Great to be here.
I think we're going to start by talking about recent results, which is my weakest subject. So somebody else, please lead the way in recent match results.
Well, yeah, the focus of today is going to be on the fact we're approaching playoffs and some of the recent changes. So yeah, recent results. We're just at the time of recording, so I don't know when this will get uploaded. We're just about to start week 7. I don't think any matches have been played yet. No,
I don't think so.
No matches have been played for week 7. So effectively, we're going into week 7. But in terms of playoffs, this week it's not going to affect much, barring some absolute disastrous upsets that we're just sort of going to assume aren't going to happen for the sake of being able to record a playoff preview before the actual regular season has concluded. But yeah, so in terms of recent results, week 6. First one was 7 and Lowpander, which was 2 5-0 games.
Exactly as expected, to be honest. There was a little bit of because Lowpander have their shenanigans and 7 have been a bit slightly kind of slacking, kind of complacent, whatever. There was a little bit of maybe they'd start to get tilted, weird things would happen, but basically, none of that happened at all. It was the absolute role anyone would expect.
Maybe it was just because I had a vested interest in 7 winning, but I kind of felt I felt tension the entire time I was watching this game. I know it was 5-0, but even not so much on Granary, I guess, because 7 got to a much better start. But I mean, on Gully, the first map, it was 5-0 in 22 minutes, but the first 10 minutes were really, really hairy. I can't remember if Lowpander won the first mid or not, but I mean, Stark dropped 3 times in the first, I think, 11 minutes. Stark was lurking on med because Raymond's internet was down. Raymond's internet is now back, just as a fun fact. But Stark dropped 3 times to, I think, a backstab, a sniper and a spy. Wait, a backstab and a spy are in fact the same thing. But either way, he dropped 3 times. He
made some mistakes, yeah.
Yeah, in the first couple of minutes, in the first 10 minutes. And I kind of said this while I was watching it on stream, if Lowpander had converted some of those rounds, any of those drops into rounds, I guarantee you they would know how to hold for their fucking lives. If they could get a lead, they would know how to bring out a sentry and a heavy or whatever and just turl it up and play for a 1-round win or play for a golden cap or something like this. So even though it was a 5-0 in the end, there was a genuine 10 to 15 minute period where you're thinking, at least for me, I was thinking as someone streaming it and wondering and wanting 7 to win, obviously, I was very much yeah, there was a world in which that could have gone really ugly. But in the end, after the first 10 to 15, it was, like you say, 7 destroyed them.
Well, the thing is, going into the game, I don't know the players on Lowpander personally, but based on what I saw in the forums and everything like that, it kind of felt like they more or less didn't expect to get anything from it. So it kind of makes sense of them not going for these kind of try and get an early round, try and play to their own strengths and stuff. And I'm pretty sure Hildreth actually said on TFTV how it was only Uber's very upsettedly stating to him that it wouldn't happen, that they didn't just not bother going to mid any of the rounds. Apparently Hildreth was a full advocate for not bothering going to mid and building guns and heavies and all that kind of stuff. So well, yeah, I think they more or less went into it being not expecting to get anything. So don't know.
Well, here's the deal. For me on Gully, they can sure go to mid because it's a very short walk to mid. You can do all sorts of gimmicks. I mean, we're talking season 9, season 10, pre-gunboats, heavy and sniper to mid was I wouldn't say standard, but it was you had the expectation every time you went to mid that there could be a sniper or a heavy or both. Since gunboats, that kind of went away from Gully, but nonetheless, you still see the occasional sniper. And since the for God's sake, I've forgotten the name again. The knuckles that make the heavy move faster. Since
eviction notice.
Yeah, since the eviction notice was allowed, heavy can get to mid slightly faster. So they had options for Gully mid, but I was watching as I was watching on my stream. Grand, there's nothing you can do. The walk to mid is so long. You can't run anything other than soldiers and scouts and have a hope in hell of doing anything.
Yeah.
It's just too long a walk. So they had to run cookie cutter, and they had no chance really to compete like toe to toe with 7. So I would definitely have advocated like not going to mid for them on Gran. Like Gran was such more of a straightforward game for 7. I think for sure they should have at least tried not going to mid on Granary.
Probably, but I don't know. From the bits I've seen, it kind of I didn't see until about 2/3 way through the gully game anyway, and it kind of at that point did seem like the all 7 show. So I don't know, maybe it got past a certain point and they were like, oh, just end it, bugger it.
Yeah, but even on Granary, like they were in with like opportunities. They generated a lot of advantages. I mean, they run perma crits, and they had numerous, like literally numerous whiff crits. Like it was mainly like, I'm not gonna say Hildreth was like terrible in the game, but he had a lot of opportunities with crits advantage. But I mean, it's difficult when the other team expects them. It's a lot harder to hit crits when when the best team in Europe is expecting crits to come in. But they had a lot of chances to like do things with their crit advantages, and they never did anything with them. So again, even though it was a 5-0. I don't know. There was something there for Lowpander. It wasn't like a complete like crush. Basically, I mean, Granary lasted almost the full way. It was only 5 minutes in garbage time. Sorry, 5-0 in garbage time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, 5-0, 5-0. Not too much more to say, to be honest.
Pretty much.
So next was nerdRage versus Nunya. nerdRage won both maps. Gully Wash 5-2. Granary only 2-1. I didn't see a great deal of the Granary game, but from what I heard, and obviously what you can see from the result, apparently it was really close, which honestly really like surprised me considering how Nunya is like stone dead. Well, it's only 3 out of 6 the reason that they're not stone dead last anyway. And nerdRage are looking to be like a good second.
Yeah, I had completely written this one off. I literally I didn't watch any of it. But I mean, checking the logs, if I was to theorycraft, I'd say Nunya won every mid, but that's not theorycraft, I was reading the logs. Reading the logs, Nunya won every mid, so 4-0 in mids. And on Gran, mids are like really important. You can go a lot your way just from winning the mids, and if you're the opposition, losing every mid fight, it's a real like uphill battle trying to win a map when you can't win a single mid. Nunya's one round that they got was a 3-minute round, so that's essentially winning mid and then a little bit of pissing around on last and then taking the cap. So it's a quick round. So my assumption would just be that they lost all the mids, lost an early round, got tilted, and then once you're in a match scenario and it's close after like halfway through, it just stays close. Even if you're better, like it takes like a real like emotional effort to like make a game not close when it's already been close. I don't know. I don't know.
Was it just like being Granary as well? It's like it's a map which you can kind of slow things down and like make things drag out a lot more. So once what was it? It went 1 for nerdRage, and then so it was 1-1 for quite a period of time. Yeah, exactly what you'd expect. First round was nerdRage in like 7 minutes, and it was Nunya's in like 3 minutes, and then it took about another 18 minutes before anything happened. So I'm guessing at that point Nunya was just trying to keep it slow, not kind of let it get too out of control. You can see from just taking a look at the logs, it did seem like a lot of the players on nerdRage were quite massively underperforming. It's obviously like in general, it just kind of seemed like the Nunya soldiers were doing a bit more, like their demo was like more up there. The scouts on nerdRage Blade in particular, 8-17, not really doing a great deal. Like Gran is obviously more of a soldier map, but you know, there's still plenty like scouts can do. It's more telling of how the game was going, really.
Yeah, I mean, you can take any 2 players that weren't Medico, combine their frags, and Medico had more air shots than those 2 guys had frags. You can literally do it with any 2 players. Like Neo had 11 frags, Blade had 8 kills, Callback 10, Namtak 10, and Medico had 16 for 8 and had 22 air shots. And obviously air shots don't mean shit, but it's pretty like it's a enlightening stat that like you literally can combine any 2 sets of frags and it doesn't come close to the amount of like rockets that guys hit in the game. So it's pretty poor like from the rest of the team, especially the scouts, like because Neo and Blade have been sort of like Namtak has not really looked like an incredible individual throughout the season. Callback has sort of been useful, but in like a utility sort of way. Like he makes, to be like really cliche, he makes space and things like that very well. When they played 7 last week, he was very, very like integral on the mids. like doing early aggression and kind of creating opportunities for the rest of the team. But it's really the scouts that led them down here. And you can use Granary as an excuse because it's a slightly harder map for scouts. But in my opinion, it's really where you get exposed as a scout if you're like up to the challenge or not. Because the good scouts like Stark will crush you on Granary. It doesn't matter. Like if you can win scout 1v1s, you can like command the map so well. It's one of the main reasons that the crowns of old were so good on Granary, was Stark could literally just batter anyone on the flank. Like we could play full tilt close on other maps. On Granary, like no one could contain him though. Like in terms of 1v1s, like if like their roamer was like if Mike or whoever else was roaming, if Mike or Sideshow was down or like just playing with the combo for a moment, Stark would just go behind. Like the scouts couldn't stop him. So for me, this sort of has raised questions about the ability for Neo and Blade to actually compete with the other scouts in and around their level. Obviously, it kind of remains to be seen how much truth there is to that statement, but the question is asked, at least in my opinion, at this point.
Yeah, well, like if you compare it with the stats for like the Gullywash game, it could just possibly just be a fact that they felt so much less comfortable in Granary. Like if you look at just in general, like Neo in particular playing like that pocket scout, he pounded completely on like Gullywash. So it might just be a case of their scouts felt so much more uncomfortable in Granary. So when you're pumping 21% heals into your pocket scout, he's not able to get anything done, then your team's obviously going to suffer. So
it's mainly Blade, to be honest, like, because I make that Stark comparison, talk about Stark, like, Blade's the guy on the flank, like, Neo's on the combo, and when a team isn't doing well, the combo scouts' stats are not going to look that incredible. And having said that, like, Neo is not even that bad. He's 11 for 11. He went steady. Obviously, it's not like a great illuminating performance, but it's mainly Blade, 8 for 17, that's, like, a real shocker there. It's really pretty poor, and quite, I don't know, that's the one that really is, like, sort of making me ask questions, because he went 24 for 13 on Gully, which is fine. Like I said, Granary is the map where you're tested, and you're like I said, it exposes the mediocre scouts. The scouts who can play at the top, like if you can play Granary, then you're a great scout, in my opinion. At least that's the way I've always seen it, particularly since like Stark's era of dominance. And yeah, Blade didn't really live up to it on this map, so it's just something to look at going ahead. Basically, like I said, it's
like in terms of like going towards playoffs, any team which is going to go against them in playoffs has to want to pick Granary.
Yeah,
like if it doesn't get immediately banned, you're immediately going to want to go for Granary, because they just seem like if they can only narrowly beat the team right at the bottom of Prem because they just seem so uncomfortable, then that could be, well, it kind of, unless they can sort it very quickly, it's going to have to be like a perma ban for them for playoffs.
Yeah,
but yeah, as I say, either way, we should probably move on a bit more. Lemmings to at 6, kind of again similarly as you expected.
I don't know anything about that game. Didn't watch it. Wasn't really interested in it, to be honest. Lemmings not going to make playoffs.
3 out of 6 not going to do anything.
3 out of 6, literally the least interesting team I've ever seen in Prem at this point. I don't think I've watched a game of theirs for like 4 weeks or something. Like they were decent last season. This season they're just like shit and uninteresting.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate the whole off-class thing had to happen, because you got to think if they could have stayed together, they were pretty close with Lemmings, but I know 2-1-5-0 Lemmings basically cleaned them right up. Not too much more else worth saying.
Yeah, it's such a weird waste of time to like off-class. Like, I mean, I guess like they had a 2-1 game against Lemmings, so I guess it's not that bad, but yeah. I don't know. Like, if you're going to play, like, you might as well just play, and at least, and then maybe you can have like a surprise turnaround, because often when teams stop caring, they can do better. But I don't know. Yeah, it's not interesting. 3 out of 6 and Lemmings won. They probably feel pretty bad that they almost dropped a map to them, but ultimately it doesn't really matter, and it's like probably the least interesting game of the week by a mile, so let's not really dwell on it.
Probably. So right, then we move on to, we're going to do 2 games for Champ. We've got the week 5 game, which we didn't cover in our previous one. Champ versus Lemmings, which was remarkably close. 2-1 win for Lemmings on Gullywash, which is impressive in itself, and a 3-2 win on Viaduct for Champ. So both games really close for, again, like Lemmings, a team which was never going to be able to make playoffs, really. Like, and yet they can take a map, and it's only, it was only 1 round that made the difference on Viaduct, which, as a map, Viaduct can be pretty weird anyway, so it's possible, different day, Lemmings could have taken the full 6 points. And this was, just for context, this was the game before everything started changing for Champ. This was when they still had Tomp and Adiski, and it was only after this game that all these big changes started happening.
Well, yeah, they were like pretty shit. I watched. I didn't really watch this game with at the time with proper eyes, but I've looked back on it since then. Like AMS did a demo review of Zesty, and it was really like illuminating the product game because you saw like basically Zesty just have complete like. Okay, so Zesty's like not a bad player, but he's like a Prem debutant, I'm pretty sure, and he could just do like whatever he wanted on the flank. Like Viaduct is for Aroma, it's all about like connector and who's like has control of connector and exploiting space when you can go through connector for free. Like if you watch any like Drac or Blaze demo, you will see their entire game is based around how they play connector. And Zesty just could do whatever he wanted there. Like Tiger wasn't even playing like that game. Tiger was just doing like random shit and like looking, going and getting frags and shit like that. And in the meantime, Zesty would just like take connector for free, walk in and get a shitload of frags. And he went like 30 for 29, which obviously it's almost even, but like a row mode getting 30 kills on Via is pretty nuts.
Yeah.
So for me, that was like the real crucial part of that game is the fact that no one was just like establishing the flank for Champ. And I mean, obviously this leads us into discussion like of the roster change. They've obviously played again since then with a new roster, but I mean, like for those living in like who don't know, like Tom has been like so forcibly removed, not quite cut because it's sort of a weird situation, but essentially he's no longer on the roster and has been replaced by Sil. So they've just changed their pocket essentially. But looking at their game, look, like the latest game they played before doing the roster change, it was actually the flank that was in complete disarray for me. And like they didn't lose this Viaduct game in the end, but they
No.
really fucking should have lost that Viaduct game. And their biggest problem for me is just they essentially have like, I mean, there's a shitload of problems, but for me, like looking at them, I would have said like one soldier has to go. You have to remove one soldier, but whichever soldier stays, you have to put that guy on pocket because the flank needed someone to come in and take control of it essentially. And I've like said as much to some of their players, like watching this game, like Zesty is like essentially a no one. Like he looks quite good to be fair, like quite a decent player, but their flank got battered by a player who's never played in Prem before. So that's like really illuminating that you just have no like control of that part of the game.
Well, considering like going into the season, Champ was one of the most established teams. Like apart from Seven, Champ was the team which was looking to be the most prepared, the most like worthy of like making playoffs and stuff. And just the fact that they haven't been able to have like the fundamentals locked down on these like important parts of map over map like Viaduct.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, we should also mention they replaced Adiski with Spud, which was sort of, I think that was more of like a mutual thing. Adiski like really lost motivation for the game and Spud came in. That happened since the Viaduct game. But yeah, like you say, this is a team they should be contesting the top teams, not like battling for like not battling with Arctic Foxes and these kind of like Lemmings teams, like the middle of the pack. Like they're at the moment they're just roughly coming out ahead of the teams below them, but it really should be the other way. The skill gap should come after Champ, between Champ and like and Arctic Foxes and Lemmings and these guys. Maybe Arctic Foxes have some potential to do slightly more, but at the moment they're literally just
only narrowly being able to like eke out wins. Like I said, just for context again, like the week 6 game, Champ Arctic Foxes, it was 2-1 on both Gully and Granary. Foxes won Gully Wash, Champ won Granary. So I remember watching games like quite intently, and like it amazed me how Champ. I said like Champ should be a team where like there should be a significant skill gap between them and these guys below them, and yet Champ they didn't seem comfortable to kind of like outstrat them out, kind of like play a smarter game, but they also weren't really winning like the messy fights either. It didn't seem like they could even walk in and like out DM them.
Yeah, well, to be fair,
to me,
like Sorix and Zesty, like I think the DM in Lemmings is actually fairly underrated, and like when you're having no control, like on Viaduct, they had like literally no control of the game. And the DM is like, if you're letting Sorix run loose, then it's not going to go like that well. But really, it was like the structure was the problem, like for me looking at them. I mean, Gully Wash was the map that they actually ended up losing. And yeah, I don't know.
That is actually important to note, the fact that just so Champ lost both of their Gully Wash games this season to teams which you would argue be like lesser teams. Yeah, week 5 they lost to Lemmings, week 6 they lost Gully Wash to Arctic Foxes. So again, you could maybe argue that maybe Gully Wash is just like a really, but I suppose you can't really argue it's just like a shitty map for them because they had like 1/3 of their roster be completely different. So I don't know. Maybe there's enough players on Champ who just don't understand enough about Gullywash to make this kind of difference. But to me, it just seemed really weird watching the Champ versus Foxes game a couple of days ago. It just seemed weird that they felt so out of control. They weren't able just to like take fights. I think it was important on the Gullywash game. The fact that Buttnose brought in as a merc on Arctic Foxes seemed to outperform the Champ scouts really.
Like, is this with is this the second game with like the new roster?
Yeah. The new roster game. It did just seem like he was able to do more as a merc, have a higher impact than these like established scouts. And yeah, it's like a new roster, all kinds of weird stuff, but just as individual players, I don't know, the entire team just seems weird to me. I don't kind of get exactly what's going on.
Well, just to back up a little bit. So Adiski's sort of been removed voluntarily. I'm not really sure what happened with him because I didn't like the Tom story was way more interesting. So Adiski sort of left and they've got Spud to replace him. I think like that's not necessarily a permanent solution, but till the end of the season, Spud is playing for them. And that kind of got like swept away because then like less than a week later, Tom, like the story goes that Tom, he's the guy in the team who was putting in like the most effort and basically had the most riding on their success emotionally because he was very like personally invested in how well the team did. And so when everything kept going to shit, he would constantly supposedly he would frequently declare he's done, he doesn't want to play anymore, he fucking hates TF2 and all this crap that people say when they're pissed off. But then like the next day he would kind of he'd come out of it and be like, okay, cool, let's go again, boys, let's try again. Yeah, so anyway, he did this one day. Fucking hell, Ali's messaging me saying he's streaming, I should tweet it, but then he's not streaming. But yeah, either way, the next day he came back and said, so this happened, he came back and said he was going to like play again. But then something happened, like he was sick or for some personal reason he couldn't play, so they had Sil in as a merc the next day, and they had so much better results playing with Sil that they then essentially said, you know what, Tom, this time you're actually not coming back, you've quit, we're going to have Sil instead. So that's how the story goes. So essentially what they've done is they've removed the main guy who was putting in like all the attention and all the focus like outside of the game, and for the sake of that they've upgraded the skill. But the idea behind it was they wanted to fix the mentality of the team, because Tom was apparently bringing people down by being this like whiny guy who constantly wants to quit the game and all this kind of crap. But they've instead brought in Silentes.
He's a ray of sunshine.
Yes, a player renowned for his positive attitude and upbeat mentality.
He loves losing. Losing. It's great.
So, I mean, I watched Tiger's stream the other day, and he was, I'm not just going to say Sill's a fucking shit person to have on your team, because it's not true. He's a really good player, but, I mean, he was fine the other day, but he doesn't have much patience, I don't think. He's not like, if you're a team who's struggling and you need to sort of gradually pick yourself up, he's not a guy who's going to have a whole lot of patience for, I feel like, after a while. And even looking at this, for example, this Gullywash game that they lost against Arctic Foxes, Sill's stubborn approach to the game, for me, is the key thing I'd highlight in saying that's why they lost. Like, he would repeatedly take these absolutely, like, dog shit Uber trades, like these really stubborn Uber trades where you have no chance of getting anything, like 6v6, you have mid, you trade through choke, and he would just get hard denied by spam. Like, Arctic Foxes wouldn't even consider popping, Raptor would take, like, 0 damage, and then they just have free Uber advantage, and he would do the same thing on last, and I can only assume this was him wanting to do this, because this wasn't anything Champ would do before. Like, they took a very, like, slow approach to the game, way too slow for Sil to ever tolerate, which is another reason it's weird to pick him up, because even though he's a very skilled individual, he doesn't have the patience for that style of play, which seemed to be what they were trying to carve for themselves as the season went on. But I guess it's not been working for them, so now they're just sort of going with the let's upgrade the shit out of the DM approach and pray that Spud and Sil can just have enough skill, combined with like Tiger and Marosh, who are quite skilled individuals as well. They're literally just stacking as much skill as they can into the lineup and sort of praying it works. But I mean, I see that honestly, all I see for this team in the future is complete fucking collapse. I don't see Spud. If like Spud basically has to enjoy it to decide to stay after this season. He's given no like indication he'll stay beyond this season if he's not like really enjoying it. And like, unless they do well, he's probably not going to enjoy it because they're just going to be struggling. Like I said, they're in a weird position where they should be beating the teams below them. They probably won't beat the teams above them, which is like the least fun place to be in TF2. When you don't get any like morale boosting victories and you just get crushing defeats. And then Sil's probably going to like get fucked off and leave because that's kind of what Sil does. He did it last season. And like, it's not even a criticism of the guy. Like, he's come in to kind of fill a hole for the rest of the season as far as I can tell. And unless something dramatic changes, he's probably just going to sack it off after the season, because why wouldn't you? Like, the team's a mess, essentially.
Yeah, that's it. You saw from the game, like, they were kind of in pieces, and maybe they'll be able to put themselves together a bit before playoffs, but I'm kind of expecting going into playoffs, I'm expecting them to just play this same kind of thing where they just try and, like, DM everyone and don't bother trying to be, like, overly strategic, because they kind of don't have a great deal of time to, like, make sure everyone's on the same page for that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I don't think it's how most of their team's going to want to play at this point.
Yeah, at this point they have no chance. Like, they have no chance to do it on, like, team play and coordination. Like, they have a lot of skill in the lineup and not a lot of time to get that skill to perform. Spud needs to shake off the rust for sure. Like, he's nowhere near performing his peak in these games. But I mean, he literally hadn't. I don't think he'd literally played the game until like a few days before this match. Maybe like he played like once before this match where they lost to a map to Arctic Foxes, and like I say, like Sil probably was just playing with complete disrespect. Sort of like, who the fuck is Adam? Who the fuck is, like, you know, who are these guys, basically? Fuck Raptor.
Yeah.
And just literally thinking he could do whatever the hell he wanted. Like, maybe he's going to sort of sober up and have to play with slightly more respect. I mean, it's still, he's never going to play with that much respect for the opponent. But, I mean, he was playing like he was playing against mid players, like, trying to take these trades. So, if they don't do that shit, then, you know, they can win fights with skill, is what I'm saying. But they need to get rid of all this other crap that just, like, sabotages them. I mean, the rounds they lost on Gully were pathetic. Like, it was sort of like, they would hold choke with Uber disadvantage, and Arctic Foxes would just Uber into them and kill them and take a round. And then they would do these. When things actually went their way, like they say they would have like Arctic Foxes second and do something toward last. They would just do a trade and wipe, or they did like a 2-man sack. But then Spud and not Spud, sorry, Marosh and Feeling got caught out, and it was literally just Spud and Turbo Monkey stuck on second. They got forced. And then that was what actually started off them losing the first round of their loss, I think. So, like, that's the kind of dog shit they're doing at the moment. And they have about a week to fix it before playoffs. They got to play 7 later this week, and they play playoffs. So they have a lot to fix in not a lot of time. So, good luck, I guess.
I think it's going to be like, I don't know, a bit of a mess. It'd make the playoffs more interesting if they could kind of like put themselves together. But I'm kind of expecting, I don't know, everything's going to kind of fall.
I think they're going to be interesting.
Something we didn't mention last time, which should probably be brought up, especially now with so much of a change, is the fact that ChampGG has been playing with News as a coach this season.
But he's no longer though.
Is it no more? Is it officially gone?
Yeah, when Tom went, I'm pretty sure it's like when Tom went, he wanted like no part of it anymore, because he was very much like in the line of thinking that it was retarded what they did to Tom, like cutting him when he wanted to play still, and when he was sort of like the driving force behind the team's like motivation to watch demos and like, you know, prepare for games outside of the scrims and shit like that. I think when he went, News was done with it as well.
Well, then there's no point lingering too much on it, but I'm just kind of,
I think it's worth mentioning because we missed it last time and it's actually really interesting.
Just the idea of like, personally, I think the idea of like any good team, if they have the ability to like get some kind of coach, it's always going to be a positive thing, because just that kind of like outside point of view is going to help you improve on things, like, which, you know, because obviously when it's just you guys in the game, you can get like caught up in all the bullshit. You can, you know, kind of just like get like tunnel vision, and just having that kind of outside person looking down and picking up on things is always going to be pretty good. But the problem is that like, I think most people probably didn't even realize that News was coaching, because like this season compared to last, they seem less kind of like together, and it kind of
But that would only work like if everyone was on board with the idea of trying hard, like properly on board with the idea of trying hard. Because it's one thing having all that resource, but if you don't really want to do it, and then you've got to sit there like half an hour with some other guy telling you what to do, surely that's going to suck the enjoyment out of it for you if that's not what you want to do.
I feel like Tiger even alluded, not directly to that, but almost to as much, like in the drama thread, I don't actually have to hand, like there was a lot of essays coming out of that thread, and one of them was like, Tiger wasn't saying that he didn't want to try and wasn't keen, but he definitely alluded to the fact that there was differing, not necessarily levels of motivation, but levels of willingness to commit time to the cause, either because people are work, like Tiger works, maybe other people have more spare time, they're students or unemployed or whatever. I don't know the personal circumstances there. But he definitely alluded to the fact that there was differing levels of like a willingness to commit time and energy to the cause. And I think it's interesting as well having News as the coach, because like you say, it's anyone with an extra pair of eyes is good. But I'm just going to pick out someone like Tiger, just because I know he has a very particular way of playing the game, and I think he's a very like decent player, but he doesn't seem entirely. I don't get the impression. Maybe I'm being too harsh a judge here, but I feel like he'd be one of those who's maybe slightly less open to like ideas from players he sees as beneath him, because News is a player with no prem experience, like. And when, like, from my experience anyway, watching him, he looked like a player with more skill than brain when I saw him play in high. I mean, I don't know him at all, and I'm sure, like, from listening to his analysis now, he definitely has a good idea of TF2, and has probably had a lot to offer. But there are definitely people out there, and for example, maybe Tiger, maybe not, but like he's one who, at least I would consider it could be an issue. Like, is he going to accept News' opinion of the game when Tiger clearly has like more experience, like playing at a high level? He doesn't seem exactly like the type of guy to me who would take all that on board with open arms. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, like it's not really like a proper coach in like a proper like traditional sports team or esports team where you sort of they have authority because they quite literally have authority over like your contract or your employment. There's no actual sense of authority, so it all comes from respect. Like, who else has really coached a team? Yourself, Kaidus, and Samzy?
I think the Fragile in America had a lot of, like, not a lot of sway, but he was very still closely related to teams, I think. I'm pretty sure I saw him on stage at Rewind at one point with EVL.
But that's what I mean, but he used to be their former medic.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We've obviously our sample size is 4 fucking people, which is a little bit questionable, but I think in a game when there's nothing really to play for other than respect, if you don't have respect for your coach, it's not, I can't see it working. Obviously, in some cases it will, but
I know that there's like a friendship circle that involves it's the meme mumble or whatever, the AIDS Brit mumble, but I don't know how far that stretches. But I know like Turbo Monkey, Tom, and News are sort of all part of that circle, so I can see like that half of the team sort of functioning well with it. And Spud also like coming in could have been part of that. But then like Tiger, Marosh, I don't know about Funds, I don't know where he fits into things, but like I feel like you would have a split in that team between people that know News really well and respect his opinion, and this is just speculation, and then those that maybe don't so much because they don't know him personally, and he doesn't immediately seem like someone who has a lot to offer because of his lack of experience. But like if you know him personally, you would probably know like he has a lot to offer because you talk to him about the game. It's like eepily, maybe you, for example, I know that you have a lot to offer when it comes to opinions on TF2, but to the average TF2 player, you're probably just some shit nerd who doesn't actually you're just some shit nerd who loses every match in high.
Yeah, that's me. That's my thing. But yeah, I think it's just interesting to like bring up the whole News coaching thing. Like, it'd be interesting probably to like kind of talk to him or talk to a couple of players on the team to try and see what it was like, because like again, we're talking about like going way back to like the start of the season, going into it, they were I think it was actually someone was quoted on the TF2 thread saying that their goal was like minimum second place.
Yeah.
So, which in itself is like kind of setting yourself up for disaster, because you're so particular about like, oh, the only guys will lose to a 7, then it's like instantly going to be like a bit dodgy. But just going into a season and getting this guy who is pretty like untested and like not massively experienced in terms of like top level stuff, having him try and coach a team which is aiming for second, you could see why players could possibly just be like not so much paying attention. And like I said, like there is a bit of a friendship thing. Again, all speculation. It could be the fact that maybe there wasn't so much of this respect, and maybe that kind of annoyed members of the team more. And they was like, look, this guy's trying to help us, like, and you're not really listening. You could see how it would spark some kind of like messiness within the team, but we don't know exactly. Just kind of making some guesses.
You really define yourself in what you see as the hierarchy in TF2. Like, as soon as you say you're the second best team, everyone you lose to except for the best team is like a disappointing loss.
Yeah.
And it just sort of, I guess it makes it harder to really interpret. Like, maybe they play these sort of like mid-tier teams and it's kind of close, but maybe there's other reasons for that. But if you've sort of set your sights and all your goals on finishing second, then even having a close game against someone you see as like a 5th, 6th place team is disappointing because 7 won't be doing the same thing.
I don't think anyone saw top 5, or now nerdRage. Sorry, I keep calling them top 5. It's quite disrespectful. I don't think anyone saw like nerdRage, formerly top 5, getting anywhere near as good as they are now. And for me, that's where it really started to go sour for Champ, because they played their matchup in week 2, and nerdRage won that in ETF2l score. They won that 4-2. Did nerdRage, winning Process outright 4-2 and losing Snakewater 2-1 on a golden cap. So when you're saying to yourselves and to the world, you're the second best team in Europe, and you're gonna, worst case scenario, you're gonna come second, and in week 2 you lose to a complete. As far as Europe, like, they came 6th last season. They didn't change. They changed one player in their roster, and arguably Blitzo, who left, was one of their better players. So you're coming into that game thinking we're gonna fucking stomp these idiots. Then you lose that. It's week 2. You're like, oh shit, what's going on? Turns out now that nerdRage are pretty good, actually. Like, they're not like, I wouldn't say they're like an elite level team yet, but they're pretty good. And there's actually not that much shame in losing to them. But in week 2, no one would have foreseen that. And when Champ lost, they would have felt like they shouldn't have lost that. So that, I feel like that's probably set them on a very bad course. And they for sure, like, regardless of anything else, they for sure decay with time. Like, they were playing, like, pound for pound, they were playing better in preseason and in the early part of the season. It's not just that their results are bad now, or that the other teams have improved. They're playing, or were playing, like, let's say before the roster changes, they were just playing bad. Like, they were much worse than they were before. And the players didn't get any less skilled. It was like a mentality thing. I feel like they just sort of bled as people.
That's the other problem as well, isn't it? Like, you don't really have any proper data on the other teams. Really, like, you only play ETF2l seasons as your only sort of metric for official matches.
Yep.
So maybe in like the extreme cases, like 7 are going to be at the top. You know that. One of these other teams, 3 out of 6 or whoever, are going to be near the bottom. But you don't really actually have a lot of data. You don't know if top 5 at the time got better without Blitzo or whatever. You don't really have any metric outside of PCWs to properly assess it. So then to say with like certainty that you're going to be up and around the top, again, it's risky, and you're not really basing that on a lot.
Yeah, you could see why it would having that assumption going into it and then so quickly being like knocked off your pedestal. You can see how it would be like a catalyst for things starting to go a bit fucked up, basically.
Yeah, but like, with the talent they have and had before the roster change, like, regardless of top 5, nerdRage getting better, they should still have been like number 2 in terms of like pound for pound skill, like now more than ever. And it sort of remains to be seen what's going to come of the Silentes Spud lineup, because like I said, they weren't anywhere near peak performances against Arctic Foxes, and there's a lot of obvious fixes they can do to their team play to not drop ridiculous rounds. So it remains to be seen how that lineup goes. But I mean, they should still be like, playoffs are coming. All these like regular season games kind of go out the window. We're going to see them matched up against like all the other teams. Like, we're going to see them against 7 before playoffs, but I mean, that's just like a fucking classic ETF2l bullshit, like rigging the season again. Like, 7/Crowns have played their supposed, like, going into the season, their number 1 rival in week 7 for like, I think it's literally like something like 6 out of the past 7 seasons, or like 5 out of the past 6 seasons. They've played their number 1 rival in week 7 when it literally doesn't fucking matter anymore, and the seeding's already decided. Like, even if 7 drop 6 points to these guys, they're going to stay first seed. And ETF2l have done this, like, I'm sure they're fucking rigging it, like, for sure. There's no way that happens by chance. Like,
I'm pretty sure even in the other ones, like, it was either like week 6 game or something. Like, it's always towards
the thing, end. When it wasn't week 7, it was week 6. So I'm pretty sure they randomly generate the fixtures, but if they don't like them, they like re-roll them. So that it's like all randomly generated. They're not actually making that game happen in week 7, but they just do the roll until it happens. And they're like, right, these are the set of fixtures we go with. But either way, so we're going to see this game happen in week 7 where it doesn't fucking matter. Like, we saw this once where Crowns, we played full tilt, and we fucked them on Viaduct, like 3-0, and they needed both maps to take over our first seed. So once we'd won Viaduct, it was like the worst game of Badlands I've ever seen. Like, they didn't give a shit, Silver on direct hit. You remember it, CX?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was just, because it's just a nothing game. It's a pug. Because nobody wants to try super hard, right? because in a week's time, 2 weeks' time, you're playing these guys for the actual title. So you're not going to run your real strats. You're not going to run like whatever you're planning to do.
Yeah.
You just throw it because it makes no difference and keep everything like on lockdown.
It's also just demoralizing. Like you have to like, you're like a, I don't know, like a dog running around the track after the rabbit. Like you need something to chase, or you're just not going to put in as much effort.
It's the ultimate dead time, really, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's not just like the last few minutes of a game. The entire fucking second map is dead time.
Just,
yeah.
Quite impressive, actually.
Yeah, it's literally 30 minutes of garbage time. But in any case, that's what's happened again this season. I really hope that they'll stop doing it, because it's like, I'm not going to say it ruins the season, but I mean, we're deprived essentially of one exciting fixture per season because of it, or very, very often we are. So yeah, we're going to see what Champ like have to offer. Like I say, this new lineup needs to kind of evaluate what they did. I saw them play from Tiger's stream like in scrims the day after, and they had a shit first 20 minutes, but then the rest of the night they looked pretty decent. So I think they're, regardless of anything else, I think they're in a better position now to challenge than they were before. But in terms of like long term, I don't see this team lasting into next season, at least not anywhere near its current form. And they have, like, by and large, they have the lion's share of the available talent. Like, for me, the jury is out on Funds and Turbo Monkey, but let's just say hypothetically the rest all play on to next season. Spud is the best demo available by a mile outside of 7. Sil is the best soldier available by a mile outside of 7, and Marosh is one of the best, like, in terms of talent, scouts available, like, by a mile. And I'm pretty sure I've heard already that Tiger is going to be one of the ones who quits. I think I've heard that anyway, that he's going to be working too much next season or doesn't want to commit the time because of his current work schedule. So that's one guy gone already. And like, I couldn't, like, Sil and Spud might quit just because, well, at least Spud might quit because he was never here as a permanent solution anyway. Yeah. Which means like Sil is completely up in the air. I don't claim to know what's going through his head, but you know,
I imagine it'll be very heavily weighted on who stays and who doesn't stay.
Yeah,
like Sil's not going to sit there, and I can't imagine Sil and Spud sitting there if they've got to trial like 2 more players and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like I can't imagine them going through that and just playing with another like half random team.
Yeah, so yeah, like. It's an interesting scenario now because I feel like if I was putting a team together, let's say all those guys are out, like Marosh and Funds, I think as a scout duo are still very valuable. If I was putting a team together, like I say, I'm not so sold on Funds as Marosh in terms of just pure skill, but Funds seems very like willing to do a job like for the team in that kind of half equal way. Like I haven't seen him as an individual enough to really judge, but he seems like at least to have the right mentality and to be like willing to be a role player and do a job for the team, which is something in short supply a lot of the time in TF2. Like everyone wants to be the fucking hero. So I feel like that scout duo is very valuable. And in terms of like rosters being put together for next season, I mean, obviously we have the AMS team happening elsewhere, which we'll get into later. But whatever happens next season, like with this team is interesting because they have pretty like, regardless of other people leaving, they have like a lot of like value, I think, to their individuals still.
Yeah. Well, just to say, because obviously we've said a couple of things about playoffs, but just to again give a bit more context for playoffs. As of right now, the beginning of week 7, we have 7 sitting at 36 points, which, like you said, they're guaranteed first seed anyway. Regardless of what happens, they're guaranteed first.
Yeah.
nerdRage is sitting second place with 28. They have 1 game remaining versus Lowpander, so you would expect that's going to be a bunch more points to them, whatever. Very closely guaranteed second place. ChampGG sitting down 26. They have won also like guaranteed playoff spot at this point.
Oh no.
No.
I've just looked at it. They're gonna have to play a tiebreaker for 3rd and 4th
Wait,
place.
Is there only top 3 not going to playoffs?
No, it's top 4, but okay, so there's week 7 games to be played. The basic assumption is Champ are going to lose 6-0 to 7, and Arctic Foxes are going to beat 3 out of 6, 6-0, which will put them both level on 26 points each. And in their head-to-head, they tied 3-3.
Oh my
so we're
God.
going to have this AIDS scenario where they're going to have to either do some bullshit decider, like with round difference, or play a playoff game to decide who has what seed in playoffs, which is always just a horrendous affair.
That's happened before, hasn't it? Like I remember, like it's the same thing when there's sort of whole like ladder system, and then like 3rd and 4th basically just played each other twice.
But the playoff system's different now. It's a full like top 4 bracket, double elimination.
Okay.
So it's at least not going to be quite as horrendous, but it always just seems tragic when you have to do a playoff to decide seedings in a playoff. But either way, that actually kind of throws it up in the air in terms of playoffs because we don't know. We haven't discussed Arctic Foxes much. It's worth mentioning some of their like prowess at the moment, but we don't actually know because I guess we can just look at it from the perspective that all the teams are going to play everyone. Like the bracket's slightly up in the air still, but chances are all the good teams will have to play each other because it's double elim.
Yeah.
So we can just look at it when we get there. We can look at it like as a purely like head-to-heads of all of them because the chances are that all the matchups are going to happen that are interesting.
That's the problem, though, isn't it? It kind of doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, like that's what like some of like the 7 guys say. Even though they obviously want first seed because they're the best team, you'll hear a couple of them just saying, "Who gives a shit? All that matters is we're in top 4, and then we have to beat everyone anyway." And that's true. But
I guess because you don't really get any advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in theory, as 7 going in as first seed, you get the easier matchup against 4th place, and I think seeding decides who gets to decide who bans first, which is always kind of nice, but I don't think it's really, it's very, very slight and minor. It doesn't really make that much difference.
It's kind of slight for a 7-week effort.
Yeah. But yeah, Arctic Foxes, we didn't really, I don't know if there's more to say on Champ, but at least the same match, ChampGG versus Arctic Foxes. Arctic Foxes are actually interesting, which I didn't expect.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched their demos the other day, specifically focusing on not Adam Racecar. Apparently, it's Adam Racecar or something. It means like little cloud or something in Czech. But I'm going to call him Adam Racecar because it's way cooler.
It's literally what everyone uses, and I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, so Adam Racecar is...
Where are you getting the car from in this name?
I just heard him referred to as Adam Racecar, and it's just stuck with me ever since.
Like it's just a fucking K.
Yeah, but it was when I was coaching 7 before they went to Re1 and I was watching their games and they were scrimming some team and they had this guy called Adam. I just remember Drax saying who's Adam Racecar or saying Adam Racecar and it just stuck with me. Either way, everyone calls him Adam Racecar. I'm calling him Adam Racecar. But Adam Racecar is an interesting player because good demos are in short supply at the moment. So we have Smear going into the AMS team, which we'll get into in a minute. We have Ali in 7 and Spud kind of in the midst of a maybe sort of could be comeback, and if that happens, it will be good. But otherwise, the rest of the demos are not that great. Like Elocor and Lemmings looks okay, but I was told Adam Racecar is just some idiot who runs around piping things. But I watched his demo against Champ, and he was legit. Like he had like 5 deaths per map. He also played 7 in a scrim that night and had like 5 deaths, and that's not like a game where no one dies. That's like about 7 deaths lower than the average on the server or something like that. And he looked to be like legit. Like I feel like whenever there's a particularly new demo coming up in the scene, people like he'll get like a nice pipe on you, and you'll be like, he's a fucking idiot just running around with pipes because you sort of feel embarrassed that you've just been wrecked by this kid you don't know. And I feel like that's what happened with Adam Racecar when people tell me about him because I watched his demos and he's not an idiot running around with pipes. He is a player who is playing a good positional game, knowing when to leave fights and surviving a shitload more than any other demo in Prem at the moment. Like. He survives. He has a better like deaths is like the number one statistic that I judge demos by. It's the first place I go to see how they're playing because it's basically like the only definable metric for game sense. Now it can cross a border where you go into being a beta who doesn't commit to fights when he should, but you can use it to an extent as a metric for game sense and like your read of the game and your positioning. And he's winning that fight. Like he's like winning that stat at the moment across the board. Ali's playing cocky. Ali has the ability to do it, but Ali just plays cocky because he's in the best team. But yeah, this is a really interesting player, which makes this team quite interesting now, actually, because Raptor has a lot of talent as an individual medic. Shocky is a legend of the game who at any moment has the ability to be like really, really good. I don't know as much about this Sikaz guy. He wasn't playing the match I watched, but knows was murking.
Hasn't he been around forever? Like I recognise that name. Some like Czech guy or something.
The important bit to mention with Sikaz or Sukaz, whatever, is the fact that he has been playing with Shocky as a scout duo for the past like I think 4 or 5 seasons. He was in the old Lemmings, and they've played with each other for just ages and ages now. So they're a couple of scouts who are like very confident and comfortable like playing with each other.
That's interesting.
They went all the way through when Lemmings had their season in mid and then all through high, and obviously now Prem, they've been together for just seasons and seasons now.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. So they also have DD5F on Roma, who for me is probably like the weak link of this team at the moment. He doesn't have any discipline and doesn't really have the DM to play without discipline. but he's not bad. Like he's not bad, and they have Feeling on Pocket, who is not an incredible talent, but quite a smart individual and quite capable of keeping a team unit together. I mean, they're not there. They're not the finished article yet, but I mean, they have a real asset in Adam, because, like I said, there's literally no other demos in the scene that are like capable of becoming a top demo, in my opinion, at the moment. Like Elacor is sort of like maybe, who knows? But like even Namtak in nerdRage doesn't look particularly convincing to me. He seems like the weak link of his team. So demos are in such short supply. So Adam in this team is really interesting for me because he seems legit. Like he's not amazing yet, but he has all the right pieces. And when you consider the other individuals on this team, they could become like something interesting. And like they're gonna make playoffs now, barring a disaster. They're gonna make the playoffs, which wasn't always obvious this season.
Yeah, there was legitimately, like, as the weeks went on, a bit of a kind of question mark between like Arctic Foxes and Lemmings and not Lemmings, Lowpander and kind of whatever. Like going into the season, it kind of seemed like my predictions going into things was that Arctic Foxes probably would be like that 4th, 5th. They definitely seemed better than like the Lemmings roster, but it does. Their recent games definitely showed in the fact that they will be definitely basically finishing within playoffs. I think it's like they're going to be interesting to see in playoffs, with Champ looking a bit kind of weakened and maybe nerdRage having, to me, just like their dodgy thing on Granary makes me, gives me a bit of kind of doubting. And I think it could be
the what on Granary?
A little bit the nerdRage's dodginess against Nunya.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think that like the playoff games could end up being like actually quite interesting.
Yeah,
if people get the right maps and stuff.
No, it's like really like panned out okay. I mean, the fact we're even bothering to do a podcast on TF2 at the moment can attest to that, because let's face it, at the start of the season, there was not a whole lot to talk about. It literally was a bunch of shit teams plus 7. But now it's like shaping up pretty interesting. Like 7 is still the standout like team that it should crush everyone, but there's enough promise in the teams below them that I'm interested in their matchups. Like, I don't expect any of them to really challenge 7, particularly this season, barring like a really good day versus a really bad day for 7. But they all have the ability to progress into something interesting. Therefore, their matchups at the moment interest me for the sake of the fact that they can grow into something. So I'm interested to track their progress, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you mean. So there's no realistically, 7 are basically just going to win.
Yeah.
But there's enough going on below it with enough merit long term.
Yeah, and when you factor in the conception of this AMS team, currently titled Team, which is a very good name, like kind of getting itself together on the outskirts, you then actually have 5 out of 8 teams in Prem that look interesting. And then you have Lemmings, who are actually proving quite interesting as well, although word on the street is Zesty is moving to America after this season for studies and won't be playing, and he's quite a key component of that team. So Lemmings become perhaps slightly less interesting, but you still end up with 5 out of 8 teams in Prem that are quite interesting, and I actually find Lowpander interesting as well. So suddenly we end up with a Prem that's like from dog shit to okay,
a lot better than it was expected.
Yeah, it's starting to look up. I mean, so let's go. Do you want to go into playoffs now, like into actual considering the matchups, or toward the AMS team? Should we do playoffs first?
Might as well, just to kind of wrap up the whole little segment.
So yeah, I guess we kind of talked about all the teams as individuals. In terms of like, I don't know, for me, like looking at it, like I said, 7 should just like crush it. They should walk through the upper bracket, make the grand final. Is it a best of 5 grand final? Do we know?
I'll have a quick look.
I can't. I think it was last season. So remember, it was the season before. Because I remember them losing a map to Lego, but still having a bunch in hand.
Yeah, there's best of 5.
There's best of 5. So 7 should walk to the best of 5, go into that with a 1 map advantage. But I mean, who's gonna like? For me, it's like who comes second or who plays the final. I mean, Arctic Fox is probably the outsiders at this point, even though they drew with Champ. I feel like they're an outsider because Champ should probably sort their shit out. Sil should not take these horrendously bad Uber trades, and they shouldn't throw rounds because they can't track Ubers. Yeah. And they should probably like beat them out. And nerdRage have like the team kind of unit coordination. But I don't know how you separate nerdRage and Champ with this new roster. I mean, it really comes down to the synergy and coordination and experience playing together of nerdRage versus just the raw power that Champ now have acquired. And it's, I don't know, for me, it's really going to come down to like, that's the match I want to see. I don't know. Yeah. Like, I'm really hoping that we're going to see that match because I mean, I guess there's no way we don't see that match because it's double elimination, unless Arctic Foxes do an upset, in which case that's juicy.
I'm kind of expecting like the same as you. Like Arctic Foxes are kind of, I think they might have like an interesting game or two, but they're still going to end up at the bottom. But
Yeah.
and I think like this whole nerdRage champ is going to be like, it's definitely gonna like it has to end up happening, and I think it's gonna be like a really interesting game. I can see it like going to like 3 maps and even then like being pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think this is how it works. I think we're going to have a playoff for the playoffs between Champ and Arctic Foxes because they're both going to finish on 26. So let's just say, in theory, Champ win that game. We're going to see Champ nerdRage in the first round of the upper bracket. So we're going to see that head-to-head straight away. And by my estimates, we'll probably see it as the lower bracket final as well because Arctic Foxes, they should lose to all these teams.
Yeah.
I feel like Buttnose was probably an upgrade mark for them in this match they played against Champ. So they're actually going to be down some firepower that they otherwise had. But I mean, given their dues, like I'm interested still in the games they're going to play, but I'm just not expecting particularly enormous things. Like Stefan motivation is always a big question mark as well. If that guy could actually show up and just be fully into it, like if he could just live like one day of 2013, 2014, whenever it was that he was the king, if he could just like live one day with that motivation again, he could still like stomp people. But yeah, by my estimates, we're probably going to see Champ. I still think we're going to see Champ finish second this season, regardless of anything else that happened. Champ still take my money for making the finals.
Yeah,
I think they're just going to be too strong in terms of skill.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good choice, isn't it? If you replace people last minute, bring in someone who's established, talented. So you don't have that risk. There's less risk picking up someone who's already been there and done it before.
Yeah.
I'd like to think nerdRage would be able to kind of like bring it because just like following the storyline of the team, I think it's been like it's cool to see the guys who like played together for ages and ages. But I think you're right. Like Spud and Silentes, like it's firepower and it's experience, and as much as the first game like looked dodgy,
The fixes are so easy for what they did wrong.
Yeah,
like the mistakes they make were so easy to fix. Like I was howling watching that shit, man. It was cringeworthy. So I'm pretty sure they'll be able to fix them as long as they can just keep Sil from like wanting to like disrespect the opponents too much. I mean, to an extent, it's good because you play confident and you go and crush them. But as long as they can keep a leash on that guy even slightly, then they should really be able to do it. I think.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. And then exactly what was said before, I can't see any other way the season ends apart from 7 winning. So more or less, yeah, 7 champ, nerdRage, Foxes in that order.
In a way, I kind of hope that. Well, I guess we're going to see because week 7 will have 7 against champ, but I kind of feel like. Actually, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with. I was going to say I feel like nerdRage would give 7 the better game at the moment, but I'm not sure if that's true. But I feel like 7 this season, they've been playing super cocky, and by my estimates, they're actually not any better now than they were. They're not playing any better now than they played at Rewind, where they had to like fucking limp to second, like struggling and like knuckles bloody. Like they really had to like do everything. We had to do everything we could. However you want to look at it, it's awkward for me to phrase it. To come second, and Froyo didn't play like that well. Like Froyo had a skill ceiling that was way above what they played. So 7 at the moment, second best team in the world by default, but they haven't really. I don't think they've improved that much. Like the Pascari for AMS and Captain for Stark swap. They're still like having to make up ground there. Obviously, Captain's a huge upgrade, but losing Stark is a pretty big deal. So if Champ show up, I think Champ actually 9 times out of 10, I think nerdRage probably give them the better game at the moment. But if Champ show up at their peak, then that could actually get really fucking interesting because 7 have been playing very much the way they've been playing is hinged a lot of the time on the fact they're the most skilled team. They play with disrespect, even though like a lot of their principles of the game are based on like coordination and like patience and things like that. Like Ali wants to play more aggressive, and that's completely fine. I don't actually think it's that bad, or that I don't think it's bad at all as an idea. It's not my style, but they've sort of played the whole season cocky. Like they haven't really stuck to any real like strict concept of the game, and they've not been challenged because the skill on the other teams has just not been good enough. But Champ will for sure have the skill now if they actually turn up on the day. If Spud can shake off the rust and Sil can not do garbage Uber trades, which I keep harping on about, and Marosh is like legit as well. So I think actually Champ will give them Champ can give them the better game, but they might also just be shit.
I think especially like if Champ could turn up like on form and like get an early round or two, I think that would cause a really, really interesting game against Seven.
Yeah.
So they're in this bit of a weakened state, and as it is, they like to play from ahead. So if they're playing from the back foot and they've kind of like let themselves get sloppy, I think that would be interesting, but don't want to claim anything too over the top because
well, yes, theoretically, if Seven are playing sloppy and still wants to play more aggressive than usual, like recklessly aggressive.
Yeah, they can.
There's like a potential there, like just like broadly theory crafting, but
Yeah, like if anyone's going to win it, if anyone's going to steal it from Seven, it will be Champ. I don't think nerdRage have what it takes at the moment. They're more like one for the future, whereas Champ in the here and now, they could steal it in theory. Like if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be them. But nerdRage probably will more reliably show up and have a good game, whereas Champ are just like loose cannons, like complete wildcards in this. Yeah, that's my assessment anyway. Well, I guess it remains to be seen. We're going to get a little preview on Sunday. I'm told that Champ 7 will happen on Sunday, so this completely superfluous, benign, and ultimately useless game, thanks ETF2l. Game will happen on Sunday. We'll get a little preview just before the playoffs happen, so that's going to be interesting. Anything more to add before we go on to the other stuff?
I don't think so. I think it more or less wraps up playoffs than anything you can say too much about any of the teams.
Hey. So next up, it's the AMS team, which we sort of hinted to earlier. We alluded to it, but we didn't really go into much detail. So just to reel it off quickly, the confirmed roster at the moment is AMS on Pocket, Smear on Demo, and Serotonin on Medic. No Hair P, you say? That's right, Hair P is done. He's out. He's gone already. I don't know what happened there exactly.
He's out of there.
He had a good 4 days of TF2, nice comeback and everything, but he's gone.
Hasn't he done this before? Like since his official quit, he's sort of, or at least flirted with the idea of coming back for like a week and a half or something, and then just dropped off again. I don't know.
I'm not sure, but I think the thing is with Hair P is he likes the game. He never didn't like the game, but he just was way too into it, and probably not quite good enough to be into it that much without having to take such like an emotional hit. Because he was
ruins it for himself.
Yeah, like because I know from talking to AMS, like he gets like drunk or whatever and reminisces about TLR, and he talks about how keen him and Hair P were, and how into it they were. And I know that Hair P, when he quit before, he said he had some personal issues that he had to deal with, and he just couldn't shoulder TF2 while he did them. He had to completely like nip it and just leave it. So I feel like Hair P probably came back and he likes the game and everything, but it's bad for him. I think it's bad for him because Happy was always actually a cool guy. I always quite liked him, but when he was in TLR and TLR became kind of sort of good, he was such a little shit. I mean, let's be honest. He was so like cocky, and it was really unwarranted because I mean, he had like one good game. If we're being brutally honest, he had like one pretty good game where they upset. Well, for me, it was an upset because I was very upset because I was in Reason, but they upset Reason. Happy, like the legend of Happy, he got like 80 frags in that game or so, I'm told, on Viaduct. That's how the meme goes. But either way, yeah, he was like turned into like quite the gruesome personality in the era. Then he quit and he went back to being nice old Happy. And I don't know, like I haven't seen anything to do with his comeback. This is just pure speculation, but I've still seen him playing Pugs. I was quite surprised when I heard he wasn't playing because I literally like he was playing a Pug and then I heard he wasn't playing with this team anymore.
That's what I was going to say. Like in terms of when you said about him occasionally kind of like popping back to like play some stuff, that seems more or less what it's like. It's like he'll kind of appear on PugChamp one day and he'll have like a few days of just like playing just loads and loads and loads and loads, and then he'll just gonna like vanish again. And this seems more or less what's happened here, I think.
Yeah.
I think as someone who like slowly quit TF2, like slowly faded out, like a lot of the time, at least like if you're working a full-time job, other stuff's going on, you can feel like you're playing quite a lot. You can play like 3 or 4 nights a week. But then if you commit to a team, suddenly actually like having regimented thing, not doing it whatever night you're free.
Yeah, exactly.
It becomes like a much bigger commitment, and you really realise, even if you may be playing like the same total hours, having to do it on a schedule really sort of, I guess, dominates in a way it doesn't when you just do it whenever you happen to be free.
Yeah, I can relate to that, like, because obviously I quit TF2 forcibly. I still wanted to play, but I just couldn't. But now I couldn't actually like imagine going back to having to play TF2 every night, even though I would still probably like to play if I could. Yeah, it would be weird going back to being like locked to my PC every night at 7. Not sure if I could really do it anymore. So it's understandable. I think the attempted comeback didn't happen. It's kind of a shame because even though Happy was never like rated as like a top scout, he was always able to compete in an era of probably sufficiently more skill than is around now. So it would have been interesting having him back to see how he could have matched up now, because he was a player who was always aligned with choking issues. And he probably underperformed quite a lot.
I guess, but when you talk about him choking, like he's choking against like some of the best scouts who played the game. You know, he's like choking against like Bibbin and Stark. You know, like losing out to them, losing out to like Clockwork and Banny at LAN. You know, like it's not. You know, it's a respectable loss.
Yeah, for sure. That's what kind of what I was alluding to. Is it would have been interesting to see how he matched up now. Like give him time to get back in, how he would have matched up, because he was always a player who could play amongst the best. He wasn't the best, but he would have his good games when he could like unburden himself from the pressure and just play TF2. He was a very like interesting scout. It's a shame, I think, that he's not going to play. But he's not going to play, so that leaves the confirmed roster as Am, Smith, and Serotonin. Like rumor has it, Mercy is like I think they were always going to have Mercy anyway, paired with Happy. I think Mercy is pretty much a lock. He's a player that I'm really not familiar with. I'm told he was he is an Australian. Not only was an Australian, but currently remains an Australian to this day.
He really stuck to that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, he played. So I'm told. Like I found out literally just before we went live with the podcast, so I would have researched it more. He played at the top of Australia, or in and around Prem in Australia. He's now in the UK, I think, or at the very least Europe. I'm told he's keen, he's landable, and he was the most promising person they played with. So it's looking like Mercy, a relatively unknown quantity, is going to be their scout, which kind of leaves 2 slots in terms of us discussing the lineup, which leaves 2 slots. And I know they really, really, really want... Well, does anyone have anything to say about Mercy, actually, first of all? I don't, because I have no idea, really, who he is, other than an Australian.
Well, in terms of, like, where Mercy's been playing this season, Mercy joined a team with Neutronus and Beta, which people might recognize as constantly being on PugChamp. They did shoot for Prem at the beginning of the season. They did okay-ish in the preseason playoffs, but didn't manage to do it. Even at that point, the preseason playoffs, it was like pretty clear that Mercy was like an absolute fragger for their team against those kind of opponents. So based on like what I've seen from those games and like the season so far, like Mercy is an absolute frag for scout in terms of going against the better part of high. So it doesn't surprise me too much that it's a strong consideration for this AMS team, considering how like the other spare scouts you'd have available.
Yeah, I mean, if he's everything that Am says he is, which isn't necessarily the case because Am's kind of get ahead of himself, then he's an interesting addition. I very much look forward to seeing how that goes. On the other side of things, they really want Rising to roam. Rising has been playing with them, and Rising at the moment for me is the real linchpin of this team for 2 reasons. One, because he's sick. He would instantly be one of the best roamers in Prem. He can go head-to-head with Drac. He's, I think, the only person in the division who would be able to even vaguely contest Drac for, like, in terms of, like, head-to-head, who is the best roamer. He could for sure, like, do that. And it's not only because of that, though, but apparently they're also considering or trying to get Buttnose. And Buttnose's involvement kind of hinges on Rising. Because, I mean, it follows on from that logically. Rising is so good, he's kind of going to make the team be worthwhile, I think, for Buttnose is sort of how it's looking. So if Rising is in, then Buttnose is probably in, which makes that quite an interesting team. Rising is quite a temperamental player. I wouldn't say temperamental person, because he's really cool, like really chill and nice guy. But he's a temperamental player, sort of. He needs a really specific team for him to actually enjoy the game. And so Rising is trialing them at the moment, I feel like. He needs to feel that this is a team that has promise and that's kind of worth the investment of time from him and that's going to be able to compete, because he's not a guy who's interested in losing. He's like very classic German efficiency, no nonsense, can't be asked with like wasting his time kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I feel like if Rising feels like it's worth his time, he'll be in. And if Rising's in, then they have Buttnose as an option potentially. Like Buttnose is kind of weird. He's like a little bit of a flake. Not a flake, but he's really uncommittal. I'm not sure if he would...
Merc.
Yeah, like he is. He's the ultimate merc, but I'm not sure if he would commit even if Rising was willing. He's not played in a proper team in so long. But, I mean, if that was all to fall into place and they were to get Rising and Buttnose, then whew, like I'd be
That would
pretty
be a
hyped.
sick team.
Yeah.
That'd be a pretty good team.
Also, following, like you said, following previous logic, if there's like already 4 or 5 interesting teams plus this team,
I mean,
this team becomes like a legitimate contender.
Yeah, this team will be interesting regardless of Rising, I think. Just the other players will make it interesting. I mean, it will kind of hinge more on Mercy then if Rising isn't in, because he would have to kind of live up to the billing. Whereas, say they get Rising and Buttnose, Mercy could literally just be a passenger and they'd still be very competitive. I'm told that Flip is another consideration. Like I said, I think Mercy is sort of the lock-in, and Flip is like, if Buttnose isn't interested, Flip could very well be like in contention for this slot. And Flip is an interesting one because he had his period of being really, really fucking good at TF2. He made Orsomniac and then broke us when he left, back in the build-up to I-52. We never recovered from him leaving, but he was always a very difficult player to work with because he literally barely speaks English. So Flip would be really interesting. It would completely depend on how good he still is as to whether he's worth it. I think Buttnose would definitely be a better solution for them because there's going to be a lot of sort of organizing for the team to do. I know AMS probably has a new lease on life and how he wants to play the game since his time in 7. Obviously I was coaching, Ali was main calling. It was probably AM's first real experience, probably ever actually, playing in not only a good team, but a good team with proper structure and like a solid theoretical basis for how they play. I think AMS has taken a lot from that and wants to implement a substantial amount, at least in principle, to the team. And I don't think Flip would mesh particularly well with that based on the fact he wouldn't understand anything AMS was saying, which I'm told would be a hindrance in general.
Yeah. I think just like before we go kind of like too far into things, I think it's also important the fact that that's a team being made for the summer season, and the summer season always looks directly towards LAN, and majority of these guys big LAN goers anyway. So just the idea of any team with this much pedigree moving towards LAN is a big thing.
Oh yeah, no, I'm really, really happy like this team is becoming a thing. I mean, I didn't actually mention, I forgot, I left a name out. Scrab is also like in contention for the scout role. And he's another player who can be really fucking good. Like, I feel like he always had the potential to be in a top team, but he got kind of played for Dogs. Him and Spud were just sort of like the bright stars of Dogs, the team that classically bombed out I-55, lost every single game, even to Saints. But yeah, going back to what you said, it is a really interesting lineup either way. For me, Rising and Buttnose or Rising and Scrab. To be fair, actually, probably Rising and Scrab. Because Buttnose has got this weird thing about lands. Like, you've made a good point there. Like, Buttnose came to lands like back in the day. I think like I-49, he played with a Did I Stutter mix. And I remember seeing him there and interacting with him, and he seemed to be having a really like a good time. Did I Stutter did pretty well considering they were shit. Like, by shit, I mean like they weren't like a top team. They did pretty well. They had a pretty good tournament. I remember they had a really good game of Infused. We were a top team, or supposedly we were. But ever since then, he said, like, no, I don't like lands, I didn't enjoy it. But he seemed to have a good time to me, and ever since then, he's just kind of point blank said, no, I'm not interested in going, don't enjoy them. Maybe if he had, like, a good team that he enjoyed playing with, that would be different. But with that in mind, I feel like Scrab and Mercy would probably be the scout combo I would, like, go toward. But it also really, like, the jury's sort of out on Flip as to how good he still is. Because he was really good. But I don't know how good he is now, and he has to be good to justify the language barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to talk for 10 minutes, and that's what you're going to say?
Oh god, wrong button. There we go.
I swear your mouth was moving.
Like I've got a new keyboard, right? And it's got this extra line of buttons which I've never had on a keyboard before. Like, you know, it's like these macro buttons. I don't know how they work, but they're here. But I don't know how they work, but obviously it sort of like offsets my default finger position.
Yeah.
So I just go to the furthest bottom left key because control is my push to talk.
So what were you trying to say?
I was trying to ask, has Flip been playing recently?
I don't actually know. I'm going to check it.
I've seen him streaming a couple times.
Because like a lot of the time, especially for like these DM heavy players, like if you're a DM heavy player, he just sort of relies on the fact that you win one-on-ones, you do good damage in like fights. Like if you're not playing a lot and you're not hitting those shots, like suddenly your entire style of scout gets exposed because you're if you start playing the game like you were playing in your peak, and your peak was taking a load of risky 1v1s and stuff, like if Stark was to come back in like 3 years and hadn't picked up a game and couldn't win a single 1v1, like his scout style would fall on its ass, you know, because he just lose every 1v1 and could never get behind.
Yeah, Flip wasn't like a particular like duel intensive scout. I mean, in Insomniac, in the original roster, we had Flip and Stark. So Stark was obviously the free scout doing whatever he wants. And then we got Zappis of when Flip left, and Zappis was a lot more like loose as well. So that was just a dog shit affair. But Flip was always relatively passive. Even if he played the flank role, he was one of those like more Thalashi type flank scouts who plays with quite a lot of heals anyway. So he's not like he has to like play sick and win all the duels and things like that. I mean, I'm looking at logs now of him playing. He played on last Sunday, so the 5th. We're recording on the 8th, so a couple of days ago. He played 4 maps with them. They lost 3 quite convincingly to Champ and drew 1 with Champ. And he was playing, according to heals, he was the combo scout in that lineup. He was playing with Deox, who's another scout they're probably looking at a little bit, but I don't think he's in serious contention just because of the other names they have. I feel like the other ones probably outmatch him at the moment. But Flip was playing a combo role, but both scouts were getting a lot of heals, as you'd probably expect from any team with AMS in, because he tends to play quite aggressive, which leaves a lot of room for scouts to get healed, and also a necessity for the scouts to play with the medic, just because there's one guy, like long leash pockets, you need like short leash scouts, even the flank guy. And he did. It looks like from stats, like obviously it's stats are stats. It doesn't really mean anything. He did okay. He hasn't played since, and before those matches on Sunday, he hadn't played since April 2016. Not a single log since April 2016. So that doesn't fill me with hope, because obviously he's doesn't seem that personally motivated in the game. But sometimes teams reinvigorate people and make them want to play. But based on this information, I'd say Flip's probably not going to work out, or probably not going to be the player of choice, but he might be like a last resort. But Scrab and Mercy, for me, that sounds sweet. Like, assuming Mercy is what people say he is, then that sounds good.
Yeah, no, like, I'm always really cool with players coming back, because there's really like, I'm back. I love the game. I'm into it. I'm going to get back to my peak, etc. And so many people just like, their interest wanes halfway through the season if they even get that far. Like, Hox is probably a good example. Fade Step after he joined the army, massive potential DM scout, comes back, just can't hit anything anymore. Like, there's so many examples of these players coming back from like breaks and not actually cutting it in any way the same level.
Greg.
Don't know what you're on about, mate.
But like, Scrab is one who's been playing like for ages. I don't think he quit at any point. He just sort of played with friends or something, I think.
He did the classic drop down, play with friends, like in high.
Like, I'm checking his logs, and he's at least going back 3 or 4 pages. He's got consistent logs. Like I've gone back as far as November 2016. He's been playing, every week since then. So Scrab's probably like a legit choice. I think I get him. I've never really played with Scrab, but I think he's very like calm and chill as well, which I think would really be a nice addition to any team with fucking AMS on it. Like, because AMS teams have always been traditionally very hype oriented. Like, they play well when they're up and shit when they're down. Smear is not like particularly emotional, but Smear is also very much like a steps up on the big occasion kind of guy. I think Scrab would probably be a great addition in terms of just being like chill and consistent and not really up or down, just dependable and also quite good.
Same with Rising's that kind of player as well. I feel like I think that would give him a really stable base to then play off like for peaks and troughs of everyone else.
Rising is an absolute rock. Like, even I-52, he played in the first reason, which was
Drac Pocket.
Yeah, Huey on demo.
Herpy?
Yeah, Herpy was on scout. Samzy on scout. Huey on demo, and
a medic.
Someone playing medic. Shit, was it the French guy? Bull? It was Bull.
It could be, yeah.
I was going to say it was either Bull or K3. It was Bull. And yeah, they were shit. They were terrible. They were the worst of the worst of the worst. Couldn't get any worse. But Rising was sick, in spite of everything. Rising was sick. Actually, Samzy was okay as well. Samzy played good, but the team was garbage. But Rising and Smizzy were both like good. But Rising's the relevant one. Rising was legit still really good in that lineup, even though they were bad. So if they can get Rising, that will be great. I think what hinges on Rising is whether they can contend with 7 or whether they're just like a solid playoff team with promise to get better, sort of what we have already. But I feel like if they get Rising, they'll probably go straight in at number 2.
That'd be interesting because obviously there's a lot of time in the off season for them to work on things anyway. They can start off looking pretty decent, and everyone can like get committed to doing stuff. I could see that team like being able to properly contest 7, given at least a month of off season time to practice and get themselves ready.
Yeah.
Plus, they're all relatively smart players. Do you know what I mean? There's not a lot of. For also established players, do you know what I mean? There's not a lot of there's no teaching the basics, learning the ropes of like new people to Prem or whatever.
Well, Mercy's a little bit fresh,
I guess, yeah.
But even still.
But you've got the base there. You've got the base of people who know what they're doing. You know, Rising's won like Premiership titles, etc. AMS has been around the top scene for a long time. Even Serotonin has been around Prem for quite a while. You know, you've got these people who will just be able to slot back in at a pretty okay level.
Having said that, though, Serotonin is the big question mark for me, because I've just seen the same story too many times with him, where he plays in a team, typically with AMS, and either quits a week later, or is not a week later, but quits a couple of weeks later after playing horrendously, or his internet is so shit that he either quits or is forced to just be terrible because of his internet, and then quits. I've seen so many like short stints of Serotonin teams and then quitting or coming in to replace a player who leaves and then leaving. I always thought he had promise. Like in TLR, he looked good. He was good. But since then, I don't know. I've never been sold on him since. So for me, he's a bit of a question mark. But I mean, give him a solid team, he'll probably be good again. But he's one where I need to see it to believe it still a bit, I think.
If it gets past week 3, that'll be the milestone.
Yeah, that's the thing. He'll come over a ridge at some point, and then it will be smooth sailing from there. But for my taste, they need to get to that point with him, because he is a bit of a. You never quite know. At least for me, I never quite know how it's gonna turn out.
But who else would you take instead?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I honestly don't know. Pound for pound talent, Raptor is the next best medic going, but that's in terms of skill. I remember when we used him as a merc a couple of times in the old Crowns when I was playing, or was I coaching? Shit, I don't remember. Either way, when I was main calling as coach or playing, so I had a very much like large involvement in the game. And he was skilled, but he was really like, he didn't know positioning. He was really, really fresh. I haven't really focused on him as a player since then. But like Raptor is, if I was making a team now, regardless of personality or anything like that, Raptor is probably one of the medics you'd have to consider. Like Honey is good, but tied to Lemmings. So he's kind of out of the equation. I don't know anything about like Condor. I don't know about Crayon. I don't know them that well. So yeah, I don't really know where else you go. It's a fair point. Don't think there's that much on offer.
Like AMS has played with Serotonin before. AMS has always been a big fan. Like even back, like it probably was the original. Well, I say the original. The TLR AMS was in. Like he was always a big a big fan, a big sort of. I don't know what word is. Bigger upper of Serotonin.
What?
Like,
Bigger upper.
What the fuck were you?
What? Do you know what I mean? Like good impression.
You like fanning him up or what? Okay.
You're like if you're a fan of someone, do you know what I mean?
Right.
You're a
So
fan
he
of
was
someone
a fan of him. Is that what we're trying to get at here?
Yeah, that's what I'm at. But yeah, like he'd always been a big fan of Serotonin. So it's no surprise if like the pickings are sparse, and he's gonna go and pick someone he trusts, who he likes.
Yeah. But that's also partly what concerns me about it. Like, has he just been lazy and gone for his default backup option? Like, if Serotonin had gone no and said no, would you just asked on Kaya? You know, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, like I hope Serotonin is kind of interested in playing and not just sort of like been talked into it by AMS, because he can be good when he tries and when he is interested. But I feel like motivation has always been the issue for him, and his performance wanes significantly based on his level of motivation. But either way, they have enough good players already and enough like options that this team is very interesting, and I'm quite excited for next season. I really wish, and I'm probably actually going to put some effort into making it happen. I wish there was some kind of cup or like tournament external to ETF2l that was running so we could see these guys in action before next season. I actually have like a mind to attempt to put something like that together. But that's something that remains to be seen. But I really look forward to seeing these guys play outside of just like scrims, because I think they're going to be a real good addition to the scene. Anything to add?
Yeah. No, I think exactly what we said. Looks good. Interested in seeing them properly play. If there's anything we can do to see them before having to wait into the entirety of next season,
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
Maybe if ETF2l couldn't schedule their game against 7 in week 7 for next season, that would be great.
That would be good, please.
That would be really nice. I would really appreciate that, actually. Because, like, literally, that's what they will do. Like, maybe now they don't, but that's literally what they would have done every other season for the past 5 seasons. So we're talking, like, fucking July before we see those two teams play in a match if E2F2L continues their current, like, methodology.
I know, it's that classic TF2. There's not too many super, like, top interesting games, so we'll kind of force it. And therefore, you have the two best teams playing each other on the final day of the season.
Yeah.
On paper sounds good.
It just blows because it's like, if you have them playing week 7, then they're going to play in playoffs anyway. They're the two best teams. So what's the point? You're just having them play each other like way too close, and it just
it's like a weird hangover from the days before we had playoffs. Because back then it always used to be super fucking anticlimactic. Like you would have Epsilon infused in like week 3, and you wouldn't have playoffs. So in week 7, or I guess back then there was more. Back in week 7 it would just be.
That was just your last game. Yeah.
Epsilon have to bang out some shitters to take the title, and they would bang out some shitters, and that would be it, or whatever, or like, I guess it was more like in this year it was more like TCM and like Ubersexuals, the originals. What were they going by at one point? Like, what was the org they played under that wasn't TCM? Like with Duncan, like
Dunk, Hazard,
Wecco, and these fucking
Skur,
people.
Trizak, that's
it. Yeah, like these kind of people. Shit, like TN Gaming or something. It was T something.
TMG Gamers?
Yeah, Trademark Gamers, that was it. Yeah, these guys, like, that's the kind of era we're talking about.
That's your throwback reference for that episode. Yeah. Look that one up, guys.
But either way, in that era, like, you wouldn't have playoffs, so you fucking prayed that your number 1 and 2 would play each other in week 7, so you had something vaguely resembling a grand final. But it's not the case. We have playoffs now. We have long, extended, double elimination playoffs.
We've got
fucking
plenty
need
of time
this.
to see it.
This is like for seasons now, like a big fucking group stage.
Yeah. It's like, it's just not needed. We don't need it. It's worse. It's counterintuitive. Fingers crossed. Pray to God we don't have it next season.
I like to think that they're going to heed your advice and just take the first random number generator results. But that first random number generator results put the top 2 seeds in the week 7 game anyway.
Yeah, they're gonna link you like the random seeding and be like, not our fucking problem.
You need like a live stream, like a Sonny Black and a Tombola.
The thing is, I don't really mind them like fiddling with it a little bit. It's not the fact they're rigging it that I even really care about. I mean, it is a little bit dodgy, but I don't really care. I just think the way they're doing it at the moment, it doesn't achieve the ends they set out to achieve. It just makes it actually worse.
If you're going to rig it well.
So it's not the problem that they're rigging it. The problem is they're not very good at rigging it.
Yeah.
Well, you can debate whether rigging it is a problem or not. But for me, I don't care. I just wish that
those games had meaning.
Yeah, those games should have meaning, and you can milk a lot more entertainment out of the season by by rigging it in a different way, or not rigging it at all. You be the judge. Yeah, I mean, in terms of teams, in terms of sensible, mature discussion, I'm pretty much. What the fuck that noise? That's pretty much it in terms of like ETF2l and like roster changes and that kind of thing. Anything to add on those notes, gang, before we trudge onwards into murkier waters?
No, I think we've covered just about everything we want to.
I want to throw out a broad prediction that this AMS team will look really good up until week 3/week 4. Then somebody will leave, 8% chance at Serotonin. The team will bring in someone random, it will completely pitter out, and they'll end up in a disappointing 3rd.
I'll remember that for.
I'm throwing that out. So if anyone can remember that, like in like 5 months, and like timestamp back to this VOD, just
we'll see. You still got it.
We'll see.
That's a point, actually. Let's just lay out some predictions quickly for playoffs. There's no point predicting anything else because let's just 1 to 4, like not actual matches or anything, just 1 to 4. Let's go, CX. Give me your best. Give me what you got.
I'm going to go out there with an impressive first place for 7, followed by ChampGG, nerdRage, Arctic Foxes.
I'm gonna say, just because I want to be different and I have faith in them as a team and I think they're cool, I'm gonna say 7 nerdRage champ foxes. Then I'm gonna say nerdRage second.
I'm gonna go crazy. I'm gonna say 7 are gonna win it. Champ are gonna come second. Arctic Foxes are gonna upset nerdRage and come third. I think nerdRage are gonna beef it and come fourth. Whether I actually think this or not, we'll judge later. But just to be edgy.
I like how
we've got to make it interesting. We can't
that bold third and fourth swap around.
Yeah,
the wildest.
I think it's possible because nerdRage have been built now. They're like there's like expectation placed on them, and I'm not entirely sold on them being that good yet. Like they have all the potential in the world, and they can totally compete with these teams. But I don't think it's that locked in stone. Now they have this expectation that can do things to people. Like we talked about what it did to Champ. Like that can do shit to you. And yeah, so I think it's entirely possible that nerdRage beef it. But I just hope that whoever beefs it in playoffs stays together afterwards because they're all like legit like potential teams on paper. Right, so bathroom breaks have been dealt with. Small bladders have been conquered. Sensible discussion has ended, and we're going into the murky waters now of random shit drama that happened over the past week in TF2, which is quite a lot considering it was only a week.
It is actually impressive in like a depressing way.
Yeah. So I mean, we sort of touched on the champ drama. I think there's actually much more to add to the champ drama, but I mean, there was some interesting essays in that thread. Normally, when a player leaves a roster, it's just sort of people leave. It happens.
Everyone talks about it except for players. Yeah,
like everyone bitches on the forums, but the players generally tend to stay silent, or they post like a sentence, or like they give a quote for the article, and then that's kind of it. I don't actually have the link to hand because I suck, but yeah, like Tiger came out, like Tom came out, News came out, the coach, like the walls of text, man, like from everyone. Well, not everyone. That's quite an exaggeration actually, but several of them, multiple people, gave the walls of texts, and I mean. It wasn't necessarily retarded or anything, but I mean, it was an interesting affair because I mean, I really need to find this thread, but it was interesting.
Important thing to mention is that News literally stated on the forums that like the second the post came up about like Tom being cut, he was just like, I can't remember the exact wording, but basically it's like, this is ridiculous. This was a horrible idea. That was like immediately there, shouting at how he doesn't understand what they're doing.
Yeah, like he was super like against it. Spud joins. Okay, I'm almost finding it. Really need this the old reference material when discussing this kind of crap. Where is it? Whatever. Either way, there was mad wolves of text there, man. Like, yeah, like you say.
So for somebody who's not read these wolves of text, like what's the summary? What?
Okay, well, the couple quotes are like I've got noted down, more or less like show that the whole like. Edisky leaving, they claim, was basically to do with like motivation, which makes sense. It was the less kind of a disputed kind of thing. It was more like when people saw Edisky was leaving, like Spud to replace, they could see like lack of motivation, whatever makes sense. That's kind of like whatever. Mentioned blah blah blah. All need to be on the same page in regards to putting in the time into improving. Unfortunately, this has not worked out with Edisky. That was a quote Tom gave on Edisky leaving. So. More or less what we said, people weren't agreeing with how they should be using their time, how they should be practicing, or maybe how they should be playing, whatever. But it was with Tom leaving. The quote says, forced to step down, essentially. Really wanted to change, me getting salty and get back to being the way I was, but I'm not allowed to do that, even though I've put so many hours into trying to improve the team. Whatever, though, I guess I can stop wasting my time. Which probably says a lot about he basically jumped before he was pushed. That was not like a mutual thing.
Like, just like purely in that whole thing, like just because you're trying harder doesn't mean you're owed anything, really. Like it's all about how you try, like just because you're trying harder doesn't automatically like doesn't give you any more authority. Maybe it maybe gives you a more informed opinion, but you can't like assume that, like if I'm trying super hard and nobody else on the team is and I'm ragging them for it, that doesn't maybe I'm right because they're not trying as hard and we're trying to be a top 2 team, but that doesn't actually make me the right fit for the team atmosphere. It may make me like right in terms of how to get to our goals, but it doesn't make me right for the team atmosphere.
Yeah, it wasn't so much like that they removed him. I think it was more just like how it sort of went down. Because they just sort of played with Sil and was like, whoop, see ya. And he was just sort of like shafted.
Yeah, but that's so TF2, right?
Yeah, it was pretty cold, like from the way it's been described. And I mean, you can tell by how pissed News is, like that it was cold. Because I think News was sort of just like left out of this discussion, or at least he said he didn't want to do it, wasn't interested in being a part of that. They went ahead and did it anyway. But yeah, I mean, like when Tiger makes his post, like, you know, he gives you a good like a good perspective on how the remaining players sort of felt about it. Like it was just sort of like a dirty thing that had to be done. It's not so much what they did at the end of the day. It's like the juicy part is just sort of like how they did it. Where, you know, they kind of had an issue, they reconciled. Tom was sick, so he didn't play some scrims. Then they played with Sil, and they were just like, "You're gone, kid." Yeah, I know. Like Turbo Monkey sounded pretty beaten up about it. I think he's kind of like the team is not the team it used to be from his perspective. It's just sort of like a group of guys playing video games now, whereas, you know, it sort of started out like, I mean, I guess it originally started out as like comfortably spanked with like Skeege and Adiski and these guys, and then it's kind of gradually evolved. But now it was like very much resembling like a group of friends that like hang out in like the AIDS Rip Mumble, for example. But yeah, I mean, in actual fact, like there's way too much text here to even begin kind of like fucking plumbing, man. Yeah, but either way, that was all pretty fucked. But in light of everything else that happened this week, let's just sort of skirt over it. So, favorite topic of mine, we'll save the best till last. My favorite topic, the Death Merchant University. Episode 3 came out. So last week we talked about episodes 1 and 2, or episodes 2 and 2, or whatever it was.
They have a more natural episode structure than we do.
Yeah. Anyway, we talked about episodes 1 and 2 and how episode 1 was just like a quagmire, baffling, very, very confusing. But then how episode 2 was beginning to redeem the series somewhat. But then episode 3 came out and it was
another one of these just baffling ones. The ones where you'd sit there, you'd watch it, and you just sit back like, right? And then you've confused your audience again.
Yeah, because I really try to put myself in the shoes of a new player when I watch these. Because I think they're really an important part. Like all other drama, like aside of what's happened over the past week, all drama aside, I think they're a really important part of what's going on in TF2 at the moment. They're going to be like a proper like cornerstone of the scene for years to come. These will be referenced by everyone. Like anyone who asks, how do I get good at TF2? They're going to be diverted here. And episode 3 was again very strange. It's a Demo Man rollout tutorial, an area I'm very passionate about. So, you know, and it started out fine. It was just sort of like, you know, we're going to do some rollouts today. And then it got to the rollout part where like Banning was just going to show you all the rollouts. And I assumed he was going to talk you through all of them and tell you how to do them. But actually, after about a few minutes, it was just, correct me, is this how, am I misremembering? It literally just was the jumps, silently doing jumps.
It was with like on-screen graphics demonstrating your sort of trajectory, the height you want to put the sticky, you know, like pausing it as sort of, you know, like a good visual representation of how you do a jump.
Yeah.
You know, like with the trajectory and all that. But
yeah, the kind of stuff which, if you know how to jump a bit already, like if you already know how to do like the jumps and you just need to piece it together, you can look at that and be like, okay, that makes sense. But in terms of if you're going from not really having jumped at all, you really do get thrown in at the deep end.
Yeah, like to me, I'm not sure how I felt about the visualization of like the sticky jump distances and the power of the stickies and things like that. As someone who knows the jumps, it seemed intuitive, but putting myself in the shoes of someone who's not, I'm not so sure about that. But I mean, what really stood out to me and kind of mind-fucked me was like, this is the first like gameplay tutorial that there's been. I mean, we can question all day long, is Demoman rollouts the place you really want to start at? Maybe he's like teaching the game chronologically. So the first thing you do is roll out to mid.
Game, I guess.
Yeah, but
okay.
No, it's a joke, gang. But hilarity aside,
hilarious.
Yeah, the part to me that was really weird is like, so we're doing the rollouts here, but I've taught people rollouts. I've taught shit players rollouts. I've taught good players rollouts. I've explained the mechanics of TF2 to people that have never played before, and you can't. I've never been able to, like a new player who's not really got the fundamentals of the game down yet, in terms of like the deeper mechanics. You can't just show them like the process rollout and say jump here, this much sticky pressure, this longer jump, like crouch jumping, air strafing, ramp sliding, these are concepts very specific to Source games. Ramp sliding just TF2, and these are not things that players naturally understand or know about. Like, you can't just tell someone airstrafe now. Like, when it's a process jump, it's just like, go to the right and go to the left. Like, that's the explanation.
Yeah, well, like, you're getting people who, like, most of these people, their concept of airstrafing would probably be like W strafing, at which point you're not gonna, like, it's not gonna work the same at all. You're gonna look at it and just be like, I have no information about what I'm doing wrong here. What I'm trying to do doesn't do like that.
Yeah, like,
you have no idea why.
It's not even like showing people the rollouts at this point that like confuses me. It's literally like you haven't given them the basic faculties of jumping, like
movement,
like crouch jumping. That's not a thing. Like, I have to explain to like new players what is crouch jumping. I've literally like had to like I tell them in general like, fuck it, just get a crouch jump script. But like, at least like, you know, you have to explain to them what crouch jumping exists. Let alone how to do it. The same with air strafing. It exists. Like, you don't just turn your mouse and your character turns in the air. You have to do a technique. And ramp sliding is like what is ramp sliding? What is that? You can't like. I mean, ramp sliding is relatively intuitive, I guess, when you see it, but you have to like. I don't know. I feel like you have to say like, these are things.
Yeah, but the difference between like, if you watch someone ramp slide, you go, "Oh right, I didn't know you could do that. I know you can do that now." But there's a big leap between knowing something exists and knowing how to execute it.
Yeah, and none of these concepts are like explained or referenced. Like, literally, the words air strafing are not uttered. I don't think. Or correct me if I'm wrong. They're not in the video. You don't hear the words air strafing. You don't hear the words crouch jumping. Or I think like you kind of vaguely get a reference to ramp sliding where he says you have to go like, you know, at the right angle with the jump to do a ramp slide. But I mean, for me, more explanation is warranted. Like, you have to have the right velocity. I mean, he could have looked up the velocity for the jump and said like, when that's going the extra mile. But either way, I don't know. These concepts were like very, very like absent from a video. Really, really warranted them in my opinion, because they're just fundamental to the whole game.
I think from like there's like a sort of host of not problems with the individual content, like, but in the context of what it's trying to be. Like, firstly, for someone who has both, I guess, learnt jumping, this as a soldier, and then taught people to jump subsequently.
Yeah.
Like, the way I learned to jump originally was just going on my own server because I wanted to get up to the balcony on 2-foot, and that was really cool for me because I could kill snipers easily.
Yeah.
But, like, then I did that whole kaidus, you'll probably remember this, like the TF2 mentor project.
Yeah.
And, like, Haunter and Sunfragger taught me how to rocket jump, and Haunter showed me jumps around each map. Yeah. But that's me, like, on a server with a pro player, with him talking me through, like, I would do it, he would watch me and go, nah, you need to, like properly hug the left wall, or, you know, like, talking me through the specifics of what's key to remember in that jump. Like, doing the balcony jump on Badlands is, like, really unintuitive.
Yeah, like from balcony to house.
To balcony to house, like, that's super unintuitive.
Yeah, like, that was the other part.
Because I remember when that happened in TF2.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when Rib came up with the idea, or, like, invented the jump, and uploaded a video, and everyone was like, that's really good. Let's all copy that. But, like, it's a really unintuitive jump to make. By the way, now, you know, it took, like, however many, like a year and a half before anyone even knew that was a thing you could do.
When I started playing the game, it wasn't a thing. Like, a bunch of demos sort of started doing it independently of each other at the same time. I don't actually remember. You say it was Rib put it on YouTube.
Rib put it on YouTube.
Okay.
So that was my source of it. I don't know if he was literally the first one. But
like, good example, Numlocked didn't do that for about 2 years after it became a thing. He just simply could not be bothered to do it. But, like, for example, on the Badlands rollout in this tutorial, you see from spawn, he doesn't show the wall jump. He shows the floor jump because it's easier. But the difference between doing the jump off the wall and the jump off the floor, considering later in the process, like, right, for example, he does jumps off the wall, the difference in difficulty between those two jumps and the balcony, like, lack of jump, like the sticky blast out of the window compared to just dropping down and jumping off the floor, it's monumental. Like, the difference, it's so much harder to do this balcony jump, but it's like, it's not even like, it's really, really weird. It's really weird. Like, the fact that air strafing isn't a thing, I feel like you needed like a tutorial before this, like basics of jumping, like air strafing. These concepts are just not even presented. And this might seem like nitpicking to some, but I mean, I don't know, like, I've taught a lot of people jumping, and you have to go so slow for them to get it. And it can be such, like, especially for demos, it's such a deterrent having to learn rollouts. I feel like it's quite an important, this is like the only tutorials I've ever published were on rollouts, and they were aimed at more intermediate players.
I think that's part of the problem with this, though. Like, if you look at it, like, like everybody in TF2 has seen all these videos where someone makes like a montage of rollouts.
Yeah.
They go, here are the rollouts for all the competitive maps this season. Here are alternative rollouts. Here are the fastest rollouts. Oh, a new map is out. Here are the 3 fastest rollouts to get to the different chokes on this new map. Like, they're just a montage of rollouts to music for people who already understand how to roll out.
Yeah.
So you know how the jumping works, you know the mechanics, air strafing, ramp sliding, you know how it all works. So you see someone do a jump and you know how to replicate it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that felt like what it was, but again, like the whole sort of context of what it's meant to be. Like we referenced back to episode 1 that wasn't as good. Like, get a mouse, get a fucking keyboard, and then do the balcony jump. Like, it's a big fucking whoa. All right, so I've got it plugged in, right? I've got my keyboard plugged in. I've got my mouse plugged in.
Got a good internet connection.
So I've got my internet. I got my like 240 hertz monitor. Like, I had to fucking remortgage my house, but it's fine. I want to be a pro TF2 player. But right, so I've got this, right? Okay, I've got myself in the right mental space. Episode 2 on it. Got myself a mental space. Now I want to be to mid fast. I know I want to get to mid faster than other people. Got it, right? So now just do these jumps.
Yeah, like,
but there's a huge fucking gap. Like, oh, just go out in this window, ramp slide to the right, then jump to the left, then go through this hole, then do a fucking loop-de-loop. Like, there's a big fucking like gap between like how you're gonna figure all this out.
Yeah, like the main thing a TF2 tutorial should achieve is like to fill in these gaps between what you need to know to get into comm and what you need to know to be a pubber, because there's a large gap there, I feel like, especially for demo men. And knowing how to do the rollouts, like you say, you can literally watch a video and see what they are. Like, this visual graphic is kind of cool. I think once players get used to it, that'll be very helpful. But if I'm a new player, I've only pubbed before. I've played demo, I've made sticky traps on pub servers, and I like the class, and I want to play it in 6v6. I try to do these rollouts, and I just spin my mouse, and I go in a straight line, and I say, what the fuck is going on? And I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Like,
I think the episode, if taken completely independently, would be great as episode 15 or something.
yeah, it would be fine. But even then, it's like that some of the rollouts are the fastest and some of them are the easiest, but like none of them are all the easiest. It's not like they're all the easiest or the fastest. There's sort of this weird like middle ground. I guess what he's trying to achieve is get you to roll out at like a competent speed, but I don't know. This is very much like an intermediate tutorial for me, and it's like literally the first gameplay based tutorial.
It's like if you were watching these, say if you're watching these in orders, right? But right now, if you're watching them in order, you're waiting like a week for each one.
Yeah.
Which is fine. You know, you understand the logistics of actually putting these things together, having all the graphics done, recording the voiceover, writing what you want to say. But like, say I saw this first video from Banny, and I'd watched Banny play, been on his stream, and I was like, yeah, this, you know what? Maybe I will try and competitive. Maybe I'll do this, right? First episode, getting this stuff. All right, I got this stuff. Second episode, mental attitude, etc. Okay, yeah, I've sort of prepared myself a bit. Then third episode, I'm doing rollouts. Like, that's not teaching someone how to play in the order you would learn how to play. Like, you don't learn rollouts, really, until you make that jump to comp. You learn how your class works first, so it's like a weird jump of get the right gear, getting the right attitude to play competitively.
Yeah.
And now we're going to take a big leap and presume you know how your class works. And now that's where we are. It doesn't flow. It doesn't flow as like a learning guide. Like, if you were watching these in order, it'd feel like you missed an episode.
Like, for me, air strafing is an episode all of its own. I remember starting
basic demo man movement. Like,
yeah, I remember starting TF2. Like, when I started playing TF2, like, I'd played other source games, so I kind of knew about strafe jumping. But air strafing is something not entirely unique to TF2, but like, yeah, it's not really something that you need in other games. You can get along with it like really easily without it. But I remember like watching a tutorial where it's like it told you to even like the tutorial I watched about air strafing when I first started the game, and I was already partially competent. It basically told you to begin with, don't even play TF2. This was when Fortress Forever was a thing. For those that don't know, Fortress Forever is a free-to-play game that came out at the same time as TF2. It was a spiritual successor to Team Fortress Classic that stayed much more true to the original game. And the tutorial for TF2 air strafing I watched actually told me to go into Fortress Forever and bunny hop around, because it was a very, very easy way to get a feel for air movement that was very similar to TF2's, just without the complexity of having to learn to rocket jump before you get air strafing down. So it essentially allows you to separate air strafing out from rocket jumping and sticky jumping. It isolated it as a concept all of its own and taught you that basic concept. And that for me was really like, I didn't need it that much. I played other Source games, but I was very keen to get everything perfect. And that for me was like a really great way to go about it. But not only was that a great way to go about it, but at least isolating airstrafing as a thing is so necessary. I mean, crouch jumping, you just have to say, by the way, you have to crouch jump. But for airstrafing, it's like, that's a mindfuck for new players, man. It's quite hard if you not already good at it, if you can't do it already.
Like,
it's easy to forget. Like, it's actually quite difficult when you first do it.
I don't know if it's because, like, I guess maybe yours and mine, but like, because when we learned, like, crouch jumping and airstrafing weren't as big a thing, whereas
I think
now
crouch jumping was.
Crouch jumping was, but I didn't crouch jump again until I got until I played a few pugs. I didn't know it was a thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we're talking entry level,
I never played pubs. I literally just came straight in. Well, I did. You know what I mean? I came straight in at comp.
That's what I mean. If you play pubs, you don't know crouch jumping as a thing.
I see
you don't know airstrafing as a thing. So suddenly these things are new concepts. Like, because you're playing competitive, there's no reason you would know this. Like, do you know what I mean? Unless you've discovered the bug yourself or you've read a forum or whatever.
Yeah, you have to be a keen pubber to get these things.
But now, obviously, you're in a bit of a weird situation where, like, everybody's known the best rollouts because the maps have been around forever for most of them. Everyone knows the keenest rollouts. Everyone knows all the keen jumps. Like, you're coming at like a bigger disparity trying to learn the jumps. Like, I remember first playing Granary, and it was like, can you jump on the crates? Yeah, good, you've got it. You're a Div 3 soldier. You can get on the crates, and you can shoot at people. Cool, you've done it. Whereas that wouldn't cut it at this, in modern Granary.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And the time of gunboats.
Yeah, there's like a lot more to take in terms of that. Yeah, like, I don't know. There's not much more to be said, I guess. But
it's not a problem with the video. It's a problem with the video in the series, like how it fits as a context.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna label it like episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, like watch it in this order essentially.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit.
I think like the thing to mention is just in case people get the wrong idea, the fact that I'm pretty sure like we're liking the whole idea of it. We're not just shitting on it for the sake of shitting on it. Like the idea behind it is really good, like a really positive thing. Like I said, we mentioned before, like the production value is exceptional. Like it's really, really good work being done. It's just the fact that
it's being wasted at the moment. It's like it's a shame. It's like spoiling it.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like it's a great opportunity. The most prominent figure posting a tutorial video to how to play the game like me. It can even be phrased like that. You know what I mean? Like it has great appeal.
With like the most talented video producer as well.
Yeah, like it has like such a easy appeal when like I think of like some of the tutorial videos and shit I watched when I was trying to learn TF2.
They didn't even play TF2 in my tutorial. They were playing Fortress forever.
Like I remember watching like Fragger's tutorials on Soldier, which is basically like a 20-second clip followed by like basically a freeze frame on just like a wall of text on your screen, and then just like pausing the video, reading that wall of text and going, right, okay, like. But now you've got like a well-produced, the graphics are good, but I feel like that voiceover just adds the little bit, to explain what you're looking for. How do I do a low trajectory jump? What's the key? What's the timing? Why am I doing a jump off a wall here, but a jump off a floor here? Like, what's the
stuff which is easy once you know, but like for you to work out yourself, like isn't as intuitive.
Yeah, like if I'm watching like a pro match and I see a demo man try and roll out off a wall and fuck it up twice, and then he rolls out off a floor, you can see he's playing it safe for more consistency. But you don't know that at first look. You just look at it as a different rollout. You don't understand why one thing's done over the other.
I feel like Banny could use like an absolute shitter as like a sort of like a panel, as like a sample person to sort of like watch this shit and feedback on it, because I feel like there's a real disconnect. He's played the game for so long. I would be guilty of the same thing, I reckon, if I made tutorials. Some stuff is just like it's ingrained in you. You play TF2 for 7 years or whatever it is, and all this
I think 8 now. Yeah,
I don't know how long he's been. I'm just estimating. But either way, you play this game for like so much of your life. These concepts become like so normal to you. You forget they actually need rigorous explanation to an outsider. Like, imagine trying to explain, like, I don't know, they just, like, they're not self-evident, and it's a massive, like, deterrent, what the fuck? A deterrent. For they're really new players watching this. Like they come in full of promise and hope. Like, yeah, we're gonna do it, boys. We're gonna learn, and then they just hit a wall. Like you can't do that. Like they're not able to do those things. I feel like a lot won't.
It's like a fucking game. Do you know what I mean? Like if the game's slowly increasing in skill, and then it takes a massive fucking leap, it's going to put you off playing the game because suddenly you go from doing everything to not being able to do a single thing.
Yeah, like I guess it's a real pertinent example is like jump maps. If you're just casually playing a jump map because you sort of want to get into them, you have to choose a really specific map because you get 2 jumps in and suddenly you have to do like a fucking wall climb, double rocket sink, and like you just stop. You're like, well, I can't do it, and you sort of stop. Like the average person doesn't bother to go find the other map that they can do. They're just like, well, fuck it, I'll go play like what's it called, that pyro air blasting game.
Dodgeball thing?
Yeah, I'll just go play dodgeball. Yeah. Like it happens. It's what people do. So it's like it might sound really nitpicky what we're saying here, but I don't know. I think it's very valid things to point out.
I think it's like we said, the worst thing is the missed opportunity. Like it has all the ingredients to be the exact right thing, but I think it's maybe not thought about like actually how you learn to play the game.
Yeah, like I think it just needs a scrub to watch them first, or to like go over the script and be like, "What's this? What's that?" Explain that more, because there's just like a disconnect of knowledge.
It's like you said, like it's not from the actual newbie's perspective. In some ways, it's like a disjointed memory of how you learnt the game, rather than maybe actually thinking about how you learnt the game.
Yeah,
you know, like you've learnt the game over maybe 3 or 4 years before you got to the top level. Which is probably, you know, like if you watched a tutorial video and it started by saying it'll probably take you 3 or 4 years to get good, like you wouldn't continue. It needs to be like condensing that experience into a more manageable term. You should be able to watch it week by week and take on what it says each week, and then incorporate that into your game to slowly grow. Like, but you can't do that with these.
Like some people as well, like let's say like when the series is finished, some people are going to be struggling with something and just want like advice on a particular topic, so they're gonna look up that topic or get referred to a particular like episode 15 or something and just watch that video. But a lot of people are going to be like, right, I want to learn this game. I'm going to come in at episode 1 and I'm going to like go through it, and it's just sort of, it doesn't seem very intuitive at the moment to follow progressively from episode 1 to episode 2 and so on.
It feels like this video should be in a different series or something, like
I mean, maybe
or more general tips or whatever.
Like maybe he's gonna like block them all together, so like this will be part of a block of episodes. But even then, it should be like not the first episode of that block. Like I think he said he's gonna do like sets, so you have like all the tutorials for one class and then the tutorials for another class. But I feel like there should have been like before any of the class specific ones, like basic game concepts, crouch jumping, strafe jumping, air strafing, and those kind of things. I think it should have happened.
But even like if we talk about like how like new it's talking, like you're talking firstly like first episode new to competitive gaming as a whole, the equipment you need for that, and then you're talking episode 2, the sort of mental attitude you need to game competitively. The difference between gaming competitively and just on a pub server. But then surely there should be an episode like maybe about like how do you find your class? How do I know what I want to play? You know?
Yeah.
Like how do you know I want to be a soldier? How do you just choose you want to be a medic? Like maybe it's obvious, but that sort of lead in to then specializing in X, Y, and Z direction.
Yeah, I think at the end there's a number of ways you could go about it, but yeah, this to me was just like back to episode 1 of being like, who is the audience? I don't know who the audience is, and in this one it actually like it was always worse in a way because I could maybe kind of tell who the audience was, but it was way more experienced players than I think it should be for a comprehensive tutorial. Like this is like material for an intermediate player, not as an ESEA intermediate, but like intermediate in skill, not beginner, not advanced, but like the middle.
Yeah.
And it's episode 3, and actually the very first gameplay content of the tutorial. So it's in a sense episode 1 of actually being in the game. It's gone straight into intermediate, so it kind of makes me concerned for the future.
It's like you said, like if you watch episode 3, let's say you are just working your way through the series, you watch episode 3, and then you go on the server, and you try a few of these things, you don't really understand exactly how they work, and you go, I can't do any of these things. Like I can't do a single one of these things.
Yeah.
It's going to put you off massively. Like, say, how many other things do you do in episode 3? 0. I can do 0 of the rollouts in episode 3. Do I want to go watch episode 4 and try and see some other things I can fail at?
I just know it's football scores and my mouth is dropping. But yeah, dude, I agree. I agree, dude. I've got nothing more to say on this topic. I think we've pretty much covered it, unless anyone else has anything to add.
Nope, I think it's fine.
No, I think, just to sort of reiterate that, it's not... The video itself isn't a problem. Its position in this series is bizarre.
Yep. Right. So I guess the natural progression from DMU episode 3 would be the drama surrounding the video currently on the 7 channel.
Sell out.
Yep. Link in the description below. Go and give it some views. Cracking bit of kit. Cracking video. But yeah, so obviously this video, it's called Hungry Hungry Hypocrite. It started up a bunch of drama. It was given to me by someone who I won't name. Essentially, it was just a bit of a joke video that they made. You can watch it and get the feel for it. I won't explain what it is.
Give us a clue. Who was it? Top player? Not a top player. Would it be someone we know?
Someone I know.
Yeah, but would it be someone like the community knows? Is it like a major figure? Give
no
us like
hints.
at least a hint, you know.
No
Was it
hints.
you, CS? It was you, wasn't it?
You should watch a video I try and edit, and then you'll see it's definitely not me.
If it hadn't become such a scandal, I would give you a hint. But now that it has become it's like blown out any kind of reasonable proportion, I wouldn't even dream of giving a hint just in case I accidentally like let that guy down. And it's a male, and he is to get like caught out. But he's a TF2 player. Let's leave it at that. But either way,
narrows it down to about 20 people.
Yeah. But either way, so this video is a thing, and a lot of people are like, okay, so for me, it splits into two. On the one hand, it's funny, and it's just funny, and for me, like, I didn't even think twice about putting it on the channel or not, because it's like 7, people have to kind of understand, 7 is a team, but it's also like a content hub, or it's just steadily becoming a content hub. Like, right now, you're watching this video on the 7 YouTube, but none of the players are here. It's not like 7 TF2 team. The way people should look at it is the 7 TF2 team is an advertisement for this content hub. At least that's the way I would hope it would go eventually.
Well, you said this to me. I think I knew you were first setting it up. Like, 7 isn't you starting a brand new team you want to coach. 7 is you starting like more of a brand.
Yeah, that's the
that
idea.
Happens to like that sponsors a team, for lack of a better word. Do you know what I mean? Like that team is represented by the brand. You know.
Yeah, like it's twofold. So like the team is advertisement for my brand essentially, but the point of the brand is to put money back into TF2. Because I mean, without getting too like down on anyone, all the TF2 content at the moment that's out there making money is either making money for Banny, which is fine. He makes a living off of it. Some of the money goes back into Throw Your Tech and making teams go to events and things like that, which is cool. Like, no objections. Or it goes to TFTV. And I don't know how much money that makes. Probably not a lot. I'm not making like any money from 7 at the moment, like small amounts. But, you know, the dream is we'll make some money. Like, as we go, we'll make enough to send the team to events and things like that. But a lot of, like, money in TF2 just sort of goes, like, missing. Like, TFTV generates revenue on its YouTube content. But none of that, as far as I can tell, none of that money goes back into the game, as far as I can tell. So the idea is basically just, make some of the content that's like TFTV have a monopoly on, putting that back into the scene in the form of a team. So yeah, it's a content hub. It's not just a team. The team just is like in tandem advertising the brand as the brand is providing money for the team. But anyway, that aside, I don't know what the best way to frame it is really, but like, so people ask why would that type of video go on a 7 YouTube channel? On the one hand, it's funny, but on the other, I feel like it was completely valid actually to.
But I think like people have gotten the complete wrong idea about the video to begin with. Like they see it as maybe it's like partly like from like the wording of the title. Like hypocrite sounds like quite like an aggressive thing, but my understanding of the whole idea of it was that it was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing, you know, because Banny's known, you know, he's got a reputation for having quite a loud mouth and pugs and that kind of stuff. And when he's starting, you know, a video series being like, oh, you know, everyone's going to be like super nice people, it is kind of a bit like, you know, a bit. It is just a little bit funny considering what he has a reputation for. but the video isn't actually being like he's the worst human being ever. It's just it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek look at the whole thing. I don't think people had to go quite so over the top with the whole thing, really.
Yeah,
I think part of the confusion might come from sort of what Jason was saying earlier. Like, I guess part of the confusion comes because Seven as a brand and Seven as a team are merged at the same time. It's very easy to like intertwine the two.
yeah.
Like, it's very easy to as far as most people probably said, they arrived at the same time, so therefore Seven is just like a team name that has more content behind them.
They were made for the same reason, essentially. The goal of both is the same. Like they're both just created to benefit the scene. On the one hand, to have a good team, go to events, make it interesting to watch, and the other is to give like this sort of content, the podcast, my analysis, hosting the players' pods of their streams, just giving people a platform to watch that sort of content on.
But it could be misconstrued if you association Seven with essentially just the team. It will come across as basically, like this is the captain of a team that beat you at Rewind. There's like it's very easy to loosely connect the dots.
Yeah.
It's like a jab at a team, a rival.
Yeah, it's just you make a good point. Like, it is quite early days in terms of the content generation side of things. So that's like the one side of things where I can see people's point, where like, well, not their point, but I can see how you could think it's like fucking like Captain has made this video and is like dissing Banny, but it's like not that at all. Like, I received the video, I found it funny. It was definitely like worth having on the channel in terms of the advertisement and the interest and the impressions it generates. But I'll be brutally honest, like, the way Banny was behaving in that video, like on his channel, that was retarded. Like, I know people rage at medics and stuff, but like, that was something entirely else. And not like a week before, he made a video where he says that people are generally pretty nice to bad players in this game, or new/bad players. And like on these threads, people are saying like, oh, but that Psy wasn't new. He's actually played in IM. Like, for a start, IM's not good. Like, this is Banny. Like, an IM player is not good for him. He's relatively new in the grand scheme of things. And I'm pretty sure he's not actually like a proper IM player. I'm pretty sure he's looking for open. But like, is that saying it's fine to be like that to people that are not new? As long as they've played the game for a little while, you can just fucking literally like yell at them and like verbally beat them down if they do mistakes. Like I know that people do that, and like it happens. People lose like patience and yell and shit like that. But that was something else, man. This was like a whole nother level, and it happens routinely. Like, you see so many people in this thread saying, "Yeah, I actively avoid pugs when Banny's playing. It's horrible. Like, I really don't enjoy them." So I was totally down with like calling that behavior out, because it's one thing to get stressed with new players, but like that's like that was like something else, man. That was like another level. Like, that guy, like, for context, in case anyone missed it, like, that guy's literally like receiving harassment from Banny's viewers. Like, they're like messaging him on Steam, like adding him to Steam, commenting on his profile, telling him to kill himself. Like, absolute insanity, man. And yeah, when someone gave me the opportunity to call that behavior out in a relatively comedic sense, like, this is what comedy's for, man. Like, if you ask any stand-up comedian, they'll tell you, like, comedy has two like purposes in the world. One, it's entertainment, and two, it's to kind of keep external things in check. Like, it's a method. It's a method of like
subvert the norms. Like, that's it. Like, it is not like going too much into anything, but like, this is why like the Jewish writers were banned in America from writing. Like, back in, was it the 60s or whatever? Whatever that film Trumbo was about. That.
Man, we're getting deep now.
Yeah,
getting deep.
but that's the point. But like, you look at all these channels, like Banny's channel included. There is serious content. There is fun content.
Yeah.
Seven is maybe your first branch out. Correct me if I'm wrong, into like a comedic sense. But like, the same reason when Shrunick used to produce knows, like, does he still do them? Like the weekly TF2 news shows.
Yeah, he still does them back out.
Like, but originally that was put on what's his name's channel.
Oh yeah. So Nissilt.
Nilt.
That is.
Yeah,
Sin, his name was.
Yeah, so it was put on his channel when it was purely comedic. He basically just posts like big meme videos to entertain 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
But it was put on that channel because it gets exposure, and that's what gets exposure. And it's a mixture of content that gets exposure.
Yeah.
That's what Seven are doing. That's what Banny's doing. He's posting a tutorial, but then he's also posting a video of something seen as entertaining. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's someone losing their shit against somebody else, which is entertaining.
Yeah, like it's dual purpose, and it goes both ways. On the one hand, this video generates like discussion. You can say like I've made drama or something by posting this, but it was not really the intention to make drama. I think it's pretty clear cut that that's reprehensible behavior, and it shouldn't really be a discussion. People are choosing to make a meta discussion of it, of like, oh, but should it really be on his channel or on their channel because they're a professional gaming organization? And so that's just some weird meta discussion that isn't actually relevant to the topic. I mean, you know, it's TF2. It's not like a real it's not it's not a professional thing.
It's not professional.
It's not like a real
TF2.
It's not like a real
like
it's not professional.
There's no real money at play.
Yeah, like professionalism is a weird limitation. It's a limitation put on things because they have like greater things to adhere to. We don't. We can do whatever the fuck we want. Well, we can't do whatever we want in TF2, but we can push the barriers a little bit and like have fun.
Exactly. Like Banny's not going to lose money from this video, no matter how it's received, and same as Seven. You're not going to lose. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing gained or lost of enough monetary value to even be worth being a relevant point of discussion in this topic.
Yeah.
Like, it's more about, I guess, it's just pointing out the irony of, like, the fact, it's more the fact those videos were posted so close together.
Yeah.
Like, if he had posted this, like, tilt video, like, 3 years ago, and you had posted this video, it would be a little bit desperate.
It would have been the Stark tweet all over again, basically.
Yeah, like, it would have been comparing, like, something you say now to something you say 3 years ago, and then calling you a fucking hypocrite because you've changed your mind in 3 years, right? But that's not the case. These videos are like what, a week, 2 weeks apart.
Yeah,
and we disputed it even on the first episode. The entire concept that people are friendly on the internet is false.
And I
like,
want to reiterate as well, just to reiterate, like I don't buy that because this guy wasn't new, that it means like Banny saying people are nice to new players, like, and then being a cunt to this guy. Like, I don't buy that, like, separation. Like, the overarching principle is that people are generally pretty decent to people who make mistakes in the game. Because that's the crucial issue with new players, is that they're going to fuck up and disrupt the play and upset people in that way, and then they're going to get bitched at because they've ruined the game. And essentially all that's happening here is a guy completely accidentally is ruining the game of TF2 by being bad and getting fucking annihilated for it, man. It's exactly the same. It doesn't matter if he's new, if he's old. I'm pretty sure in his post he said he's had a lengthy break. So, you know, is he new again because he's like not used to the game again, or what? You know, it doesn't matter if he's new or not. It's exactly the same concepts are at work here. He's a guy who's just trying to play the game. He's not being intentionally disruptive. He's just bad, or in this game he was just bad, and is being like verbally annihilated for it. Completely unacceptably, in my opinion.
I don't try to go that far. Like,
did you watch the whole thing? Like the video on
5
Banny's
minute
channel?
video. Yeah.
Like it goes from like a completely chill scenario. Like they take mid, they kill the scouts or something. They take mid, and then they just do this Uber, and then it's just like from level to just fucking full amp yelling like out of nowhere. It's not like it was a tense scenario that built up to it, and suddenly like it just reached tipping point. Like at least the way the video like conveys it, it just was suddenly like, whoa, like what the fuck, man?
Yeah, like there's a few parts to this. I'm not disagreeing with you, but like last episode we shared like stories of our first experience with a pro player.
Oh yeah,
who called us fucking horseshit, right? And in our heads, that's fine because they were a pro player, right? Like, they sort of gives it a certain validity that they know we're fucking shit and they have the authority to say we're bad because of that. So that's a sort of a weird disassociation. But I don't... As someone who probably calls out a lot of people in previous history, I don't want to defend the behaviour, because I don't think it's particularly good or healthy either, despite my probably relentless reputation for shitting on people and having a go at people. Like this is hypocritical. Like, release another, like, queue up for fucking 7 YouTube channel. But like, I don't think it's good for people to be that harsh, despite the fact that I was probably that harsh myself. But I think the problem is, again, it's for misconception of what it will be like. And that people who are better than you, who then watch you play and you're not as good as them, will have a go at you. Regardless of game, regardless of... Even if it's a game, you know, people do that in real life, in, like, jobs, in whatever. Like, people will shit on you if you're not as good as them, for whatever reason.
You've hit the nail there.
You know, like, whether... Psy, is it? You know,
I think
whether
that's his name.
reasons for taking a break from the game.
Well, he was like tired or something, you know. A whole bunch
He
of
had
like
other
random
stuff
reasons.
going on, like he had
Yeah.
stuff in his real life. Like that's not a reason, you know. But people don't care, you know.
Yeah.
Say, like anecdotal, I play Overwatch for the first time in a couple of months. I'm still like a master rank, but obviously I've not played games in 2 months, so I'm pretty shit for a master rank.
Yeah.
The other people on my team don't care. But nobody cares now. I haven't played the game, and that's maybe a relevant reason.
Yeah.
But people will judge you.
They'll judge you, and
so that's what it is.
They'll let you know that they're unhappy with you.
Yeah,
and
like
that's
it's
just the
not
way
a
it is.
secret.
And yeah, that's like you've hit it there. Like that's the main point. Is that like I'm saying it doesn't matter if you're new or not. This is how it is. And like the point that Barry was making in DMU episode 2, I think it was episode 2, about how you'll be surprised how understanding people are was horseshit. And this was like like that's like the main point, I guess. It was horseshit essentially. People are proper like they can be really harsh.
You automatically judge people against your own standard.
Yeah.
If you can do it, surely everyone can do it, sort of thing. You know, like.
But the thing is, of the video, the whole point was that it was supposed to be making that kind of point in a slightly humorous way.
Yeah.
But that's gone out the fucking window now, hasn't it?
Pretty much. I mean, what was it? It was, let's count. What's the latest head count? 307 posts in like 23 hours. That's pretty good.
Not bad.
Has been
Pretty
like
good,
what?
particularly.
Like LOL nice divs?
In what?
LOL nice divs.
Oh, yeah.
It's a classic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I don't quite get, I guess for maybe a combination of a misconception of 7.
Yeah, I mean, that
combined
part
with this,
I can vaguely understand that, but even then, I feel like it's like random Banny fans just like, oh, but let's find something to criticize about it because we don't like it. Ultimately, I think
it's the same both ways, isn't it? You know what I mean? You'll criticize someone as a player, they'll criticize you as a content creator. Like it's all swings and circles. I think the only sort of like definitive line in all of this, because it's all sort of blurred lines of content and what each brand represents, but other people deciding what your brand represents, which is horseshit in itself.
Yeah.
But the only sort of definitive line is like, there's one thing about people commenting on the YouTube video saying this guy's fucking shit or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, if you want to take it to the extra step and then add someone to tell them they're fucking awful and they should kill themselves, or I'm not particularly bothered about the kill themselves, like, you know, because it's the internet. People say horrendous stuff to each other constantly. But like, to go that extra effort to go find someone on Steam, to add them on Steam, just to tell them they're kind of like, you're bad because I saw you in this one video with this pro player who I'm not, I think that's the only sort of black and white line of what's too far and what's, you know, that's the line.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just like a 2-minute funny video. I mean,
It became a whole lot more.
Yeah, it's just like someone said it to me. I thought it was funny. Like, it was definitely going to get more attention on my channel, well, on the 7 channel, than anywhere else. And I thought it was pretty good, so why not? And I mean, I thought, you know, maybe it would bring some new eyes to the channel that wouldn't otherwise be there. You know, because I do a lot of like analytical content and shit. I mean, we're doing a mix of content. There's like some funny highlights or some good plays and some analysis, some POVs. There's going to be more like YouTube like honed tutorial content coming soon. It's like not just highlights from streams and shit. So it was like mutually beneficial to put it there. And
will I need a 120 hertz monitor for these tutorials?
No,
possibly,
maybe,
okay.
Possibly.
I'll start saving.
But yeah, like it was mutually beneficial to put it there. I don't regret it at all. Some people could argue maybe it's a bit cheap, but I don't think it's that cheap. I think it's quite like a poignant bit of humor. Not really much more to it, to be fair. I find it funny, and I think it was accurately surmising a bit of a ridiculous occurrence. That was pretty much it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much it in general, really.
Yeah.
For defense rests its case.
Yeah. Did you guys know, though, that at I-55, Banny actually stole our producer's computer to vote for himself in the MVP award, whilst posing as buying train tickets on it?
Yeah, but did he actually book for train? So for anyone who doesn't know the story, he borrowed. This is a huge this is like a reference to like a conversation had off air, which may sort of break translation in the VOD. So as I understand it, is Banny needed to book train tickets for whatever reason at Insomnia 55
It was
Land.
55.
So he borrowed. Someone offered to lend him his computer to book train tickets, and he used his opportunity to vote himself from someone else's account MVP of the tournament.
Yeah, there was like the proper MVP award, right, at that tournament, where it's like Gio was like paying, like it was like $100 prize or something like that. And this guy that like Banny barely knew, he just like nicely let him borrow his PC to buy some train tickets, because I guess Fro had the rentals. Yeah, so he didn't have a PC anymore. Voted for himself. I found that out, like I was reminded of that just before we went live. The idea was we were supposed to work it in somewhere, but we totally didn't. So now we did.
But
I'm gonna
it is
come out-
undeniably hilarious.
I'm going to come out on a twist ball defense. And would it have been funny if somebody else had done it?
Probably.
Like if
I think it's funny anyway.
It's like no, but not as a, but if Sideshow had done it or something, or obviously Sideshow would not be voted MVP in a tournament. But say, I don't know, a player who's more, I guess, prone to comedic antics. Like say if Darn had done it or something, would it have just been played off as a Darn antic?
I think it's more the fact that the gentleman in question, he has the reputation of, I want to win everything. I wake up in the morning, I just want to win everything.
He's just competitive.
There are no limits.
It's just what it takes to win.
That's what
Exactly.
Sideshow
There
and
are no
Darn have.
limits.
I don't understand.
You reckon?
I'm on the
know.
defense on this case.
Yeah, dude.
You just
Yeah.
noticed you didn't think of it first.
I mean, I voted for myself for every award so far in the ETF2l like season awards. I've only been limited by there only being one computer in my house.
Disappoint.
What's
Right.
the point?
I think that's it. I think
Yeah,
we're good.
man. I think we pretty much covered everything. We forgot to do it last week, but if anyone has any, I guess, shout outs or those sorts of things, any upcoming things they want to plug or whatever, speak now.
Not really. Apart from anyone who knows what hugs.tf is, stay tuned, because things are happening.
Oh yeah, Hugs.tf, it's a good one. Yeah, I'm good though. That's it, gang. I think that's a wrap. CX, anything to add?
I have no relevant shout outs.
Yeah. Actually, one more thing. The next episode will probably be after the grand finals of this season of ETF2l. So we'll probably be back in, what is that, like 3 weeks' time?
I think it has to be, yeah.
Something like that. Either way, whenever ETF2l wraps up, the playoffs finish, that's when we'll be back next. Unless, barring another catastrophic drama video that provokes a 300-page thread and 150 YouTube comments and a Reddit thread that I didn't even look at, we'll be back in about 3 weeks, gang. Stay tuned.
We're on
Excellent.
call.